Welcome, everybody. This is Cultivated live from Planet 13 in Las Vegas. It's pretty exciting.
We're here.
I'm with Krista and Jeremy and Derek from Planet 13, and we are going to be doing a lot of this over the next 3 days. We have back-to-back today, Wednesday, tomorrow, Thursday, and then on Friday as well. We'll be here. What you can't see is that while we're in Planet 13, and Planet 13 is amazing, and come by your Cannabis here while you're in town, what we're actually looking at, in addition to our guests and our producer and the camera, is actually a gummy manufacturer as we watch. So if we look hungry and look like we're desiring what's across the way, it's because we're looking at gummies being made while we're here. First, Derek, thank you so much for welcoming us here. We have had nothing but awesomeness since we've been setting up, so thank you.
Thank you for having me. Much appreciated. We're very excited to have you guys.
And is it fun when the cannabis world comes to Las Vegas and this is their first stop?
We love it.
Yeah.
We love it. And in many cases, we are the first stop for the cannabis industry when they come for MJ BizCon or anything else you know that's going on in town.
Yeah, well, it's very welcoming. And
we try.
As soon as I got here and I saw that the crew was set up, I went and put my name in to buy.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to get in line because I want to buy stuff when I'm here. And when it is here, do you get, what kind of feedback do you get from the industry? I mean, people come here all the time, obviously, all year round. But this year, it's the industry. Like, what are the first thing industry people say to you when they've been here?
This year is particularly exciting. You might hear some of the construction going on in the back. I don't know if you're picking that up or not, but we've got a 3,000-foot cannabis lounge that we're building back there alongside a cannabis museum called Cannabis. So that in itself is super exciting for us. We're looking to launch that in Q1 with a hard target date of 4/20. So ideally prior to that, the months leading up, but by 4/20 we will be ready to rock with that cannabis museum and the lounge. So super excited for that, and amongst everything else going on.
Yeah, and Jeremy, you're based in New York.
Yes.
And they've been talking about consumption lounges in New York, but they've been talking about a lot of things in New York that haven't happened yet. But it will be an interesting thing to see how Las Vegas does lounges as it relates to cannabis. Like, what do you expect? Like, what is the vibe going to be there? What are you most excited about as that gets built?
Well, for us, I'm most excited about the distance that it takes people to get from the Strip to here, which is almost nothing, right? We are right on the Strip. We are essentially zoned to where we could have a full-blown nightclub here if we wanted to. So that's the idea. So we're trying to really push forward the concept of come here to not only consume, have fun, smoke with your friends, but I don't know if you guys know this, but we're the only cannabis company and dispensary in the world with a liquor license, with a tobacco license on site. So at any given point, we decided to move that license to somewhere else on the property. We could then open a fully functional consumption lounge, separated from the liquor lounge and nightclub, right? But all under one roof. All for people to come here and spend their entire day and night, and never have to leave. Really, we got a restaurant, we got everything.
So when are you opening the hotel?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's phase 4, right? Yeah, that would be great. But yeah, no, we're super excited. We're not only forging ahead here in Las Vegas, but elsewhere in Chicago and in Florida as well. So really just full steam ahead.
It's a vibe.
Yeah.
It's a real vibe.
Yeah, we're going for it.
Yeah. But also interesting because as sort of Jeremy writes about a lot and Krista and I talk about a lot, it's like the brand works across different geographies because people know the brand certainly from Las Vegas and then expanding. But it is like operating its own unique business in each of those other markets with each unique regulatory framework.
Very much so.
Which is like everything you just described. I can imagine like a regulator in Illinois being like, No.
Oh yeah. I mean, I do a lot of business in California. Our trendy brand, which is one of our like vape and flower brands that the best.
Always repping the
right here. Our trendy brand launched in California about a year and a half ago, and that market in particular has interesting to navigate. You guys, I'm sure, have been in the industry for quite some time. You've seen the development in California over the last couple decades, really. And it's the Wild West out there, man. Still, even so. Whereas here, I think we've got a pretty buttoned up, laws and regulations and our metric system, right? As opposed to Illinois, which 100% is going to be more medically driven. No bright colors.
Right.
No cartoons, no this, no that, or any of the packaging. So very much different. And navigating those in Florida, for example, we don't even have wholesale there. You have to be fully integrated. Right. And sell to yourself out there right now as the law is written. Still medical, right?
But a big market nonetheless.
Exciting market. We've got 4 stores already in Florida, and we're about to lock down another 26. Giving us 30 stores throughout the state of Florida.
A quaint 26.
Yeah, no big deal.
Well, it's so hard. If you look at the SKU counts of the number of products that are unique in Florida versus other states, they have the lowest SKU count. So I understand, because you need to create a certain amount of distribution for yourself to warrant building new brands and new SKUs so that you have good variety within the store. Because I would argue that Florida is probably the most underserviced in terms of the perception of choice in retail environments.
Yeah.
I think that's mostly because they're still not rec. They're still under the medical guidelines and that mindset, right? So it's going to take some time, but hopefully, knock on wood, not too much longer.
Yeah. I also want to reiterate just how thankful we are that we get to be in this space, because it seems like ground zero of when people are in Las Vegas, that everybody comes through, everybody comes here, and we wanted to set up shop. Krista, I think you had some retail questions for him.
Oh yeah, we had some quick hits. Give us, what percentage of your customers are either local versus travel in, or what mix of that happens around specifically holidays? Because earlier we were talking a little bit about 420.
Yes.
So give us a fact.
And holidays as well. So you're looking at, 4th of July, Memorial Day, Labor Day weekend. Those are the big weekends here.
Which isn't any different than really the other markets.
Yes.
It doesn't stand off as its own kind of set of holidays. We see all of those holidays peak as well.
I've been doing this a long time. I'm on the sales side of the business. And when you have been doing this as long as I have, you see the ebbs and flows yearly. And it's almost like clockwork. We know when the down months are going to be. We know when the uptick months are going to be in our peak seasons, right? So to your question, as far as tourism goes, generally we see about 70% tourism, 30% local. That's during your regular peak season, tourist season, right? On down months, January, middle of summer, we tend to see it gravitate a little bit more toward maybe 60-40 tourists to local, maybe even 55-45. I mean, it gets really close to 50-50 depending on the time of year.
Do they shop differently, tourists and locals?
Very differently. Yeah. That's a great question. Yeah. So your tourists are coming here, guys, looking for the most exciting new products. Some people just want the best, highest testing stuff we got. What's the most expensive stuff we got? Right. That's what they're looking for. They really want to come here and spend money. This is Las Vegas. People spend a lot of money when they go out here, whether it's restaurants or nightclubs or what have you. Right. As opposed to the local. The local consumer is very price conscious. Yeah. Looking for the best bang for their buck. Looking for a good deal. But also looking for good quality cannabis and the local brands that they want to support, right? That kind of means something to them, or they have an attachment to for whatever reason.
Yeah, that's an unusual mix. I mean, the tourism to everyday shopper mix is huge.
It's a really difficult thing also to be able to service. Yeah. You would have, what you're talking about is you have very different price bands. You would also have different quantity specifications as well, because usually when we talk about being a price conscious customer, we're talking about actually a customer is willing to purchase higher quantity, not necessarily lower price point overall, but just more product for similar amounts of money. Yeah. And so navigating how you service that with assortment is really difficult too.
Yeah, I mean, we have a huge assortment. I don't know if we have the most products, per square foot. I mean, there might be one or two other shops, but we do service a lot of different tastes and consumers. So, for us, what we try to do is just have something for everybody. If there's a product out there that no one else makes, well, we're going to carry it because you're the only one who makes it. And so we want to make sure that we have not only price points and price tiers for everybody, but, we have local programs that, our locals get some better pricing than some of the tourists might, on any given day. But that's what,
Is this your loyalty program?
Yes, it is.
I'm tell me all of the loyalty
Yes, it is our loyalty program. It's a great deal. You get 50% off with our loyalty program. And our ticket prices, we're on the Strip. We're Planet 13. We're a little bit higher than most other dispensaries in the area, but it's for a reason. we can go out and get it, and people have no problem spending it when they come here.
Nice. I saw it yesterday when people were like, the order. I was like, God, that's like, it was literally a big cart.
It's too
like
much.
It was quite literally a big cart.
Yeah, I mean, we see, roughly 1,500 people a day.
Oh, wow.
And that's customers. I shouldn't just say people. Those are
Right.
paying customers. On average, we're probably closer to 3,000 to 4,000
People
people
through.
because generally that person's not coming in alone,
Right.
and they're not all purchasing, right? Only
Right.
one person per group. So
Yeah.
we see a lot of folks through here on a daily basis.
Well, we're going to see a lot of people through here today and tomorrow and Friday. I want to let you get back to your day, Derek, but also, again, thank you so much. And feel free to stop by next couple days because we like seeing you. And we'll be popping into the rest making some purchases as well. We'll fill up our cart over time as well. So thank you so much. And yeah, really appreciate it.
Of course, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
You got it.
Great.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, guys.
Welcome back to Planet 13. This is Cultivated Live. I'm Jay, Krista, Jeremy. And Jon from Surfside. I can tell because he's got the gear.
Yeah.
I knew that before anyway. Jon, for those that do not know, give us the 1 minute on Surfside, and then we're going to dive in because I got a lot of questions.
So simplification is we work with retailers and brands in the cannabis industry, and we help them advertise. A lot of customers have different goals, whether it's customer acquisition, whether it's drive online sales, in-source sales. We've been in the business since 2018. Just recently launched a really new product that we're really excited about, which is our commerce media solution, which is now, rather than targeting people on the BuzzFeeds and the USA Todays of the world, now we have the ability to target and serve ads to people while they're in the shopping experience. So on the e-commerce sites or in-store menus. And so that's what Surfside does, and we help facilitate that for our advertisers.
There's a word for that.
Smart.
I meant
Brilliant,
they're shopping with intent, right? They're
at the point of purchase.
Point of purchase, yeah.
Yeah, so the commerce media offering is really cool because now we're able to engage with shoppers during the e-commerce experience.
Yeah.
But it's like a great way for the brands to get access to, there's 1,000 SKUs and within a store, and you can now have the top placement, or you can just have a little bit more exposure than you would with the normal menu experience.
Yeah.
Qualified customers.
These are the words I'm looking for,
There
but
you
Chris
go.
is the one that actually has them. And what were you doing before Surfside?
So I've always been in advertising, actually. Like, oddly enough, I was in like another kind of vice category when I started, which was hunting and fishing. And so when we started, actually, like this is when like Google Ads was just doing the text ads at the bottom of the screen. And so we went out to all the hunting and fishing sites and said, hey, rather than having little blue text links in Google display boxes, would you rather have ads for John Deere and Remington Arms? And so we went out and we worked with a bunch of what we call hook and bullet. So hunting and fishing companies.
Is that what you call it?
Yeah, hook and bullet.
Hook and bullet.
It was,
I like that.
So it was a hook and bullet. I was like, but it was interesting. Like we went out and we acquired a ton of different websites in the hook and bullet space. And so that was fishing, hunting, farming, agriculture. Then it was like mountain sports and power sports. But then we brought really endemic advertisers. This was like when ad networks were a big thing. And so that's where I started off in the advertising world. But like, now I'm in another space where we're talking about, hey, you can't, Google and these mainstream platforms don't allow cannabis as an advertising vertical, so there's a niche for us there, just like there was a niche for us to provide advertisers an outlet for a digital advertising experience on these sites. And I've been doing some form of advertising since then. So.
Since birth.
Since birth. Yeah.
How's business?
Business is good. I say that like no matter how the industry goes up and down, we're still at a point where there's still a ton of market share for us to continue to grow. And so yes, I really like the commerce media solution because we pay the retailers for access to this inventory. So it's a new way for them to generate margin, generate revenue. It's all margin for them. And so it takes what used to be a cost center in their site and how they're maintaining it and who's, whatever the expenses are involved in that. And now we can create revenue around that, so it becomes a profit center rather than a cost center. So that's been a really good component for us, area of growth. But at the same time, we've always focused on performance and measurement. We want to make sure that the ads drive sales, are actually driving incremental sales and lift. And so when people do cut budget, which they have done, they tend to leave our solutions on because they know that it's driving results for them. And so that's always been a pillar for us. When we started the company, we really focused on measurement and attribution.
And it's a very the regulatory environment for advertising for cannabis brands and retailers is like, it's convoluted to say the least, and there's not a ton of options, I think, but also there's a huge need. What? More than you like. There's one option for sure that we like to talk about, and that's Surfside. But it is interesting, and like, have you thought about how the business model changes if and how and when the regulatory environment opens up a bit?
Yeah, we thought like when we started the company, we didn't start it as a cannabis company. We very much started Surfside because we saw a problem with identity and first-party data. People really, what was happening in identity is people didn't want to use third-party data sets anymore. People were taking more control over their customer data. There was new privacy laws that were coming into play that we've seen in Europe with GDPR that might affect if we go to a market. Hey, can you go to Germany? Like, yes, we could go to Germany, but there's different. Not only are there different cannabis advertising laws, there's different just privacy laws in Europe. And so we knew a lot of that stuff was coming to the U.S. And one of the main things that our last company was really focused on location-based data. So as people walk around with phones in their pockets, we were able to know what type of behaviors they were doing. Like, oh, they go to Starbucks every day, they love coffee in the morning. That was really good, but it didn't help us understand what type of coffee they were buying or if they were buying a TV or an HDMI cord when we saw them at Best Buy. So we wanted to get closer to the point of sale, and we wanted to be able to provide a solution that had more insight into the full customer journey, which is why we started Surfside. And as an element of that, it solved for a lot of the complexities that existed in cannabis. Like we knew identity, we had a history and location data, which was another compliance factor. And so the ability there to kind of bring all this together solved for a lot of issues with getting scalability and getting access to this type of inventory. I think that a lot of people over time have kind of figured that out as well. Like programmatic advertising is a way to get access and way to get awareness, but I think that the difference is going to be how can you use personalization and how can you use the correct audiences and give them the right tools as far as what's working, what's not working. And now we're talking about better inventory with the commerce media solution. So we've constantly been evolving how that relates to what happens when Facebook and Google come into the mix. I think you can look at like a Twitter or X. So like when those platforms were opened and became available, our clients still wanted to use the integrations they had with us because we've already integrated into the point of sale. We already have their customer data set, so we can push segments to these platforms. And so we look at them as net new media channels rather than a new media vendor or opportunity. And so our platform allows them to buy on these solutions, but then also measure everything back using the existing pipes that we've already put in place to make sure that, hey, is X driving your sales? Is it Google? Is it Facebook? Is it Surfside? Is it Weed Maps? Is it Leafly? And we have that ability to measure across everything.
Smart.
How do you measure the success of a campaign? Like, do you have something proprietary, or is it just like marketing 101 stuff?
It's a mixture of both, right? There's like some basic stuff that you want to have in place, but I think like the simplest explanation is we're integrating into the points of purchase. So if a sale happens at the e-commerce store, we have code on site that says, hey, this person was served an ad, and that same person then showed up and made a purchase. And like a digital purchase is using a digital ID, right? Where if it's a sale in store, you may see someone sees an ad, but then goes to the site, doesn't complete the purchase, but then walks into the actual location, makes a purchase. But when you go into a store, let's say Planet 13, they're taking your email and they're taking your phone number. And then us as a business, this is where some of the uniqueness comes in for what we can do versus what's kind of the basic attribution, is that we can then onboard an offline identity like an email or a phone number, and then we can associate that back to all the devices that they own. So that's where we talk about like owning like a customer graph, an identity graph, to be able to onboard offline data sets as well. Yeah. And that's a unique component that I think we have.
One of the things that I think is like really interesting in what you're offering versus kind of where people have been going, specifically if we look at like California, Colorado, Illinois, Michigan, Massachusetts, all of those areas, a lot of the retailers are actually not as much focused on new customer acquisition, but creating additional touch points for the customers that are already their best customers. And I see this like worlds coming together in those, specifically in those types of markets where the customer is needing additional touch points. We want to think about how we drive additional transactions in a year. And so there's a certain amount of complexity that's being added to their business or like deeper understanding of who the customer is. Talk to me about who the customer was like as a retailer, what they were focused on 2 years ago versus what you think that they're going to be focused on this year.
Yeah, so I think that we've done a pretty good job recently, more so of like separating our retention campaigns from our acquisition campaigns. To your point, like there are definitely customers and retailers and brands that are more focused on, hey, it's a tight market, we want to retain all of our business. We know customer acquisition costs are higher than retention costs, so we want to focus on retention. I do think that there has been a shift for a lot of acquisition campaigns and putting more budget into the customer acquisition focus. I think there's some really cool stuff around what's become available more readily within, like, I hate to bring up AI, but, you know,
then don't. No, just kidding.
But like there are some cool things that like we're playing around with, but more so to like help you identify who your customers are, like
patterns.
Yeah, and so we can load up. What we've been doing is we've been playing around with like loading up data sets of people's first-party customer data and saying, hey, these are your most valuable customers. This is the type of ads that they are going to engage with. And so it's really important as we look at like self-service and create something that's easy for people to just say, hey, tell me what I need to know from a strategic perspective, from a customer perspective. Everything we do is with a lens of advertising. And so ours is our thoughts on how do we build this in a way to make it easy for people to now activate media campaigns that so it's great to know all these insights about my customers, but now what do I do with it? Yeah, and so our thing is like, hey, we want to tell you and then help you do it and finish that next step so that you can continue to repeat and learn from there. And I think I would say that that's going to be a cool aspect of 2024. We're obviously going to be focusing a lot with brands this year. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for them that didn't exist a year or two ago as it relates to these different ad offerings, and I think that's what I'm most excited about.
Amazing.
I also see a really different conversation happening right now in more mature markets between brands and retailers and collaboration of what that looks like, in being like maybe having, as a brand focus, having the number of distribution points maybe was really important 2 years ago, but having the right distribution points with the right partners to be able to make that happen. I think there have been underlying narratives of like that specifically in California, saying how do we create good partnership to be able to support each other to do this. And we come from Canada, and like that's definitely a missed opportunity at times in that market. And so I think what you're talking about and the offerings that you're thinking about can create better partnerships where you close the loop with your best customers.
Yeah.
It's giving them more insight into alluding to the non-payment issues that some of these companies are dealing with, but understanding where your products are selling, understanding where you believe that you're underselling and there's opportunity, like, hey, I'm the 10th best edible in store, but I know that if I were to get to the 5th, I could triple sales, right?
Yeah.
There's a ton of
What's
opportunity
that, like
there.
bell curve?
Yeah, and so like that is the type of information that we have to provide these advertisers that can say like, hey, let's not only look at return on ad spend, let's try to get your market share up double. Right, let's get you as the 3rd highest edibles, because that, like, yes, naturally that will provide a strong return on ad spend for you, but sometimes you just want to buy market share and then hold it, because the lifetime value of that is going to be more value to you over time than maybe what you're spending on a true return in the next 2 months. And so there's other ways for us to look at this information. I think people are getting a lot more sophisticated, and it definitely creates better partnerships with the retailers that are more open to facilitating these type of conversations and more open to sharing that type of info with their brand partners.
Yeah, even things like if you provide edibles and you're offering certain flavors, what next flavor should you be maybe expanding into, or even if there's other categories that your product is consistently being purchased with, having that level of insight to say, are we actually going to leverage our own brand awareness with the customers to potentially put 2 products together? So, yes.
John,
Yes.
I appreciate you stopping by.
Thanks for having me.
And the work, innovative work and groundbreaking work and important work that Surfside does, because I know it means a lot, certainly to the brands and to the retailers, and with the new move as well, it's going to be really important to help all of Krista's clients. Really appreciate you stopping by.
Thanks
Enjoy the
for
rest of the show.
having
Thanks, John.
Thanks.
Bye.
welcome back to Cultivated Live. We are here at Planet 13. We are watching tens of thousands of gummies be made in real time over here.
So many gummies.
But more importantly, we are joined right now by Khadijah Tribble.
Hi, good
Thank
morning.
you for making time.
Of course. Like I said, when Jay asks, you say yes.
Well, I told you that right before we came on that one of the great joys of working in cannabis, but even beyond that, was you helped arrange, I interviewed you and Fab Five Freddy twice. And immediately after I did that, I sent a text to my brother with the picture of me and Fab. I was like, Matt, look at this. This is everything.
Yep.
And you did it twice because we also did an event with you in Brooklyn. What have you been up to? Well, first of all, thank you for that.
Of course.
But also, what have you been up to?
So a lot of rest over the last 6 or 7 months, staying hydrated and minding my business has led to a couple of fun projects that I'm working on. One of them is launching my own cannabis brand with 3 fabulous women of color. We feel like there's an opportunity in the marketplace to really address some of the needs that have gone unmet for that particular population. So that's coming soon. We're in great talks, so I'm excited about that. I'm teaching Rutgers Law School, and I did a stint at the Kennedy School last spring. So I am enjoying being able to have the flexibility to be in cannabis when I want to, and I can pop out when I want to.
It's good to be able to step back sometimes.
Oh my God, because everything moves so fast in cannabis, right? And sometimes you just have to take a moment and say, wow, right? And thinking about, since our interview 2 years ago now, so much has happened in the space, right?
Yes.
We're talking about federal legalization, descheduling. That wasn't even a whisper 2 years ago, right? And there's this global conversation about UN treaties and all of the stuff that's happening. Because we're at a tipping point right now, right? 51 or 52% of the population in the U.S. lives in a state that sells marijuana in a regulated fashion. It's pretty awesome.
And 100% of people live in states that sell it in an unregulated fashion too.
100%, right?
But Khadijah, I think, and I don't know when this story will be written, but the story of cannabis in the U.S., there will be these markers of, I would say, I don't know, things that everybody saw. And I say that because your TED Talk is one of those things. And it's not just me saying that, like millions of people have seen it because you can actually track that. Yeah. Do people reference that to you all the time or just me?
I was somewhere last night. I was at the Flower Hire party last night, and someone was like, I saw your TED Talk. I was like, and sometimes, I mean, when I did that TED Talk, you know, I wasn't working for any company, right? I had Marijuana Matters. I just founded that. But that was really my personal connection to cannabis, right? If you see that TED Talk, you can understand why I move in this space the way that I do. Because it is deeply personal to me, right? As a consumer, as someone who's a caregiver, and as someone who's tried to help my children navigate what it means to have a cannabis conviction while they want to be in the space. But a lot of good stuff since that 5 years ago, I think I did that talk. Maybe 4. Yeah.
It's great.
Thank you.
I think people, and I say this to you in person, but also to when you're not around too, it should be required viewing for anybody who works in the space. As like in the Cannabis 101 intro too, that should be required viewing.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Go run those numbers up. Get us to 3 million.
So what are you teaching about? You said you taught at Rutgers, Kennedy School. What are you teaching about? What are students interested in learning?
So one of the things that I wanted to do, because, you know, for all intent and purpose, we're still a fairly new regulated industry. And we are experiencing all of the challenges that comes with that in terms of building the talent and the leadership capacity in this industry. And I don't take this lightly. But it is our responsibility for those of us who are in it for the long haul, because people jump in because it's sexy, it's cute, until you get in and you realize, baby, you're going 8 hours a week.
It's not that sexy.
Right? It's not cute and sexy, right? But for those of us who are in it for the long haul, we have got to build the confidence that everyone that keeps, for the folks who are naysayers about cannabis, which means we have to build the capacity of our leaders to lead in the moment that we're in now. We're struggling with leadership in cannabis, right? We've seen this mass exodus of really incredible talent because we've hit, you know, a hard place over the last 2 years from an economic standpoint. Now's the time to double down. And so I went back to the Kennedy School because I really wanted to talk about this context of building the professional capacity of folks who are building a multi-billion-dollar industry. Like, we're in the beginning of that. I know 10, 20 years from now, we're going to be like, that was nothing. But it really is something special to be in this space right now to help the U.S. figure out how we legalize cannabis in a way that's inclusive of all communities, that gives us the ability to compete with pharma, alcohol, and tobacco, really.
I was actually going to say just a quick...
Yeah.
I think it's funny. You're talking about building an industry, and literally they're building as we speak. Like, I feel like we should reference it back, but we can hear construction noise. I don't know if everybody else can, because they are literally building the consumption lounge that they hope to get licensed here on site at Planet 13. So you're thinking of it a broader context, but it actually, in a very literal context today, right there.
But it's very, very true. Literally and figuratively, we're building something incredible. And we want the kind of leaders that are able to really handle the moment. And I think for me, going back into the academic space was to get to that. How do I help build the capacity of our leaders and invite other people into the cannabis space to help us build something that's quite, remarkable?
Yeah, I've been guest lecturing at a university in Michigan, and the class last year and the class this year, and one of the things that I thought about a lot after leaving MJ Biz last year was actually that the intellectual property of the industry is wrapped up in the people.
Yeah.
And so how do we do a better job of translating that and sharing that information, not just for the leaders who are in it today, but for the leaders who come tomorrow. But also, it's like there are so many learnings that are wrapped up in individuals that could service and help other people, specifically in other states that are not going to be competitive today.
Right.
And instead of being so secretive or protective of this information, the application is always going to need to be unique. So I'm like, how do we make information more accessible?
Right.
What are the things that we can share that everybody should have a base understanding of? And my personal things like retail education, but the pieces of coming in and sharing that information are so important.
Right.
What's one thing that, to Jeremy's point earlier, is like, what's one question that you kind of reoccurringly get from people outside of the industry asking you about the industry today?
So I spent a lot of time, especially over the last 3 or 4 months, in the product development space. So I'm talking to consumers all across the country. And one of the things that's really consistent is this safe for me, right? I think we've been growing at like this incredible pace as more states come online, and we've missed a real opportunity, but I think it's time to get it back, is the education of cannabis at several different intersection points. Our regulators need to be educated about cannabis in a very real way. Like, how do you create the infrastructure to build a marketplace that can be successful for your state or your local municipality? But the other piece is consumer education. There are tons of people looking and ready to replace their wine, alcohol, looking to replace the things that they use for pain or sleep over pharmaceuticals. They want something that may be more natural to them, right? Is cannabis an answer? It can be, but we have to, as an industry, get really serious about consumer education and bringing the would-be consumer along with us on this journey. And I think an answer, because how do we get information to people? We should talk and discuss whether we want to do a white paper together. Like, what have we learned as folks who are in the academic space wearing our cannabis hat that we can expose other people to by writing? I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn writing things, so maybe we can come up with a joint paper.
I like this.
Are we doing a collaboration?
I think we're doing a collab.
I think we just committed.
That's what women do.
Khadijah.
We do.
I like it a lot. Khadijah, I do want to thank you, and now I've backed people up all day, and we have a whole bunch. But I really do want to thank you, one, for coming and saying yes, but also for the time you've given over time, both to me personally and things I do, but also to the cause.
Thank you.
Because I think it takes leaders like you, before, now, and in the future, that'll get to this point where 20 years from now, they'll be like, oh yeah, those were some rough spots, but people like Khadijah help sail through that.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me, and congratulations on this venture.
Oh, you got it.
You got to invite me back.
Oh, well, don't worry about that. Thank you so much.
It was nice talking to you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Khadijah.
All right. Bye-bye.
Welcome back to Cultivated Live. My name is Jay Rosenthal, Krista Raymer, Jeremy Burke, Jordan Isenstadt from Marino. We are at Planet 13. We are live. And just a note for people watching or watching afterwards, you will hear a construction noise. This is quite literally the industry being built in Las Vegas because they are building a museum and a consumption lounge. And it sounds like from our first conversation today, like maybe a nightclub here at Planet 13 where you will never have to go anywhere else but here. Bar, food, cannabis, dispensary, entertainment, the whole bit. But thank you all for being here. And Jordan, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And you are with Marino.
Yes.
You are a leading PR agency based out in New York. And like, are all your clients here and buzzing your phone right now?
They are. They are. It's a very busy time. But it's exciting to be here in Vegas, exciting to be back at MJ BizCon. We've created a, fairly like large group of cannabis clients, everything from like MSOs to canna tech companies to retailers and cultivators and brands. And it's just really exciting to be a part of an industry that is like literally we're building it in real time.
Yeah. We talked about that.
Yeah.
Literally and literally.
Literally building it in real time.
I was going to say, I've been a journalist for a long time, so I've worked with your folks, worked with a lot of PR companies. How did you find the opportunity to gain cannabis clients in the first place? Like, what were those conversations like, and have you found success?
Yeah, so we started the practice about 6 years ago, and Jon Marino, our president, I was like, hey, I got this crazy idea. Let's start a cannabis practice, and they gave me the runway to start to do it. We did luck out. We landed this little old company called Paleotech, which eventually became Curaleaf. So we got a very good kind of
first step
ground. So it was a great way to start. We kind of like learned everything we needed to know about the cannabis industry, corporate cannabis, etc. What we like about the industry, what we don't like about the industry, and so we were able to sort of build off of that initial experience. And so, from obviously Curaleaf, just the name helped open a lot of doors for us. So we were able to then work with True Terpenes, and then we picked up a cannabis law firm, and then we picked up some of the hemp brands in New York and New Jersey. So like it all just sort of organically grew, and success begets more success. A lot of what I do is I'm more on the new business development front, so like I publicize the great work that my team does when we get to work with journalists like Jeremy and others, and tell great stories about the industry. So it's been very organic, but it's like very exciting how just year over year we're just continue to grow.
Can I ask a question? Because all that amazing, but it's also a big week, for New York, like your home base. Jeremy wrote about it today, sort of what happened, but talk about what it means, like real terms for some of your clients, because it seems, you're going to correct me wrong, like card licensees may go as a card program, and this is the conditional adult use retail dispensary program in New York. Talk a little bit about what it means to your clients, and then maybe broader to the industry in New York, because I think it's a big week.
So, I mean, this was the moment that we've been waiting for a really long time. We're like, finally, all of these, social equity dispensary licensees can finally open their doors, and hopefully in the next, month or so, several will open in Q1 next year. I was talking to someone from the fund, and hopefully there'll be like another 25 opening at the beginning of next year. So it's all starting to happen. I mean, what it means is that all of the brands that we work with, the cultivators who are sitting on tons of product, the processors who are also the distributors who are right now just distributing to 25 stores, that finally we can like unlock the potential of what will be a great market. It also means that we can start to really tackle the illicit market issues that we're dealing with in New York. I know other states have tackled this before, or not tackled it, but are dealing with it. In New York, we have a profound problem with illicit cannabis storefronts.
Yeah, it's a bonanza for California growers.
It is.
I'm just kidding.
It is. Well, no, it was really funny. I was at a conference earlier this year where Steve D'Angelo said you can buy better California weed in New York than you can in California.
It's true. How big is New York of an opportunity for you in general right now?
So,
given the fits and starts.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's our home base. I worked for the New York State Senate and 2 New York governors. So, like, I've sort of lived through this whole process. We did a lot of work with the Cannabis Association of New York for many years. We, passed the MRTA. So, I mean, this is now the moment where storefronts can finally open. Earlier this year, we did kind of create a fairly, robust kind of starter PR package for the retailers. And so, we have a nice pipeline of retailers who are kind of ready to start to publicize their brand, ready to go. So this is it. This is finally it. We can open the pipeline and just start opening stores. So it's exciting.
There is an overhang, I think you're going to tell me, even having been to a dispensary in New York, there is an overhang of product that is it's just dying on the vine. It's not the right word, but there's an overhang.
Yeah.
But also I think consumers are we have legal cannabis, but I can't get to a dispensary because it's too far away or there's not enough for
You'd be amazed as to how little regular people know about what's going on. People just see dispensaries open up. They're like, oh my God, they're open. But it takes a little bit under the surface to say it's not legal.
Yeah. No, people really don't understand the difference between the illicit market and the legal market.
No.
And, as a New Yorker, New Yorkers are all about convenience. So right now in Manhattan, all of the legal stores are south of 16th Street.
Right.
So unless you're there, you're not going there, right? Because there's, right around the corner, there's a bodega that's also selling weed, and it's probably better than the legal market right now.
How dare you?
Right.
We're gonna get there.
Yeah.
We're gonna get there. This is a process.
And Jeremy too, but we live in Toronto, and it's still a thing. There's still dispensaries that are popping up, and you're like, well, there's one down the street that has 2 ounces for $100. I'm like, well, how are you supposed to get me with that?
There's also, I would argue, it's the customer just doesn't know how to distinguish either. So there are lots of instances. It's still happening in Canada, which is, it's been so long still, but it happens in New York where the customer doesn't even realize that they are maybe not purchasing from a regulated environment.
Right.
Yeah. No, there's been, different efforts to the governor of New York has, there's a big sticker that's supposed to be in the store. And so they've tried to really publicize that. There were some folks who said, all the window fronts of the legal cannabis store should say in very big letters, we sell legal cannabis, but nobody really wants to do that.
Right.
Right.
So
Takes the cool out of it when you do that.
Yeah. And look, some of the illicit stores, they look pretty legit.
Yeah.
You know, the problem is, so a year ago we wrote a report about the illicit market, and so we went and visited, 20 different stores, bought product, had it tested, and 50% of it tested positive for E. coli.
Oh, yeah.
There was like contaminants and heavy
Right.
metals. There were products that were labeled 100 milligrams of THC. Some of them had 0. Some of them had 200. Right. So like, if you're just the average consumer and you buy, you think you're taking a 10 milligram edible, but it's really 20. Like, that could kill your interest in cannabis for a really long time. So, this is actually important for the future of the industry.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder, we like to try to ask a question like this every time someone comes in, but we're here very early days of this week in Las Vegas. What do you think we'll be talking about out of the next couple days? Like, what do you think some of the trends that we'll be talking to folks about, but also you'll be hearing from your clients and on the trade show floor? Like, what do you think we're sitting on top of right now in terms of trends?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I'm seeing, a lot of conversations about some of these emerging markets that people are really excited about. So like, putting New York aside, right? So, Maryland, Missouri, Minnesota, people are really excited about some of these state markets. I was at the cannabis law sessions yesterday, and so, a lot of conversation about rescheduling, a lot of conversations about interstate commerce. So I think, there's definitely going to be some buzz about that as well. But, it remains to be seen, right? I mean, last year, I thought sort of like that was like New York's coming out party. There were so many New Yorkers here that it seemed like, wow, this is it. But now we're here, so
we can fit all the dispensary owners and operators in this
room, basically. Yeah, no. So I mean, it's a lot of fits and starts, but we're getting there.
Yeah.
We're getting there, and this show just keeps on growing, and it's amazing because like you come here and you meet so many interesting people. I just had the best conversation in the waiting room with someone. I was like, I am so glad that I met you.
Well, he's coming in a sec. The other Jordan.
Yeah, the other Jordan. Jordan's at Bonded today. Yes.
I want to thank you for coming in. Thank you for the work you do, but also giving us insight of what's happening in New York, because there was a New York vibe last year, and now it's like, okay, there'll be another New York vibe this year, and then maybe next year too.
Well, a lot of the New Yorkers stayed home.
Yeah.
Because they're
busy.
They're busy.
Yeah.
So maybe next year can be a big New York year again.
Yeah, it'll be a New York 2 years. It's like 2 years to get to 1 year of growth. It's like
that sounds like the cannabis industry, right?
But that's also what you're just saying about Missouri. Well, maybe about Minnesota most noticeably is that they don't have a massive medical program, so it's not like they're starting where Missouri or Maryland did. Like, it's really starting anew.
Yep.
But they also have some weird, they have beverages.
They have like weird, the way the laws were written were very unique. Let's say.
Or not written. I think in that case it was like just
it's like, do what you want.
Yeah, do what you want. Let's have 10 milligram beverages at CVS. But thank you so much for coming in. Enjoy the next couple of days, and we'll see you, I'm sure, in and around.
Awesome. Can't
Thanks,
wait.
Jordan.
Well, thank you guys.
That was Jordan Isenstadt from Marino. We have Jordan Wagman, James Beard nominated chef, coming on in a second. I thought he'd heard me say that, but he didn't. So we'll thank you, Jordan, and we'll welcome Jordan in. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
I am Jay Rosenthal. This is Cultivated Live. We are in Planet 13. One quick show note. I think that's what they call it on TV. If you hear construction noise, that's because they are literally building the cannabis industry here at Planet 13. They're building a museum and a consumption lounge. We're looking at gummies being manufactured, people coming in to buy cannabis even though it's 9:16 in Las Vegas time. That tells you about Las Vegas and what's going on here. We are joined by Jordan Wagman, James Beard nominated chef. Hey.
Hi, Jay.
How are you?
Guys?
It's a very Canadian group
I
right
know, it's
now.
very Canadian.
Oh, Canada.
You could bring your guitar.
I should have.
You should have.
I should
Just
have.
walk around with it.
That's right.
Tell us all the things you're doing this week in Las Vegas, because I know there's several.
There actually, to be honest, I had a dinner that I was doing,
Yeah.
and what I learned very quickly, and I should learn from previous experiences. When you come to Vegas, two things are true. One, everyone's last minute,
Yes.
right? No one wants to commit. The other side of it is no one wants to pay for anything. Right. Everyone wants to go and attend free events, right? So, so my chef friend and I, Chris Bonotto, he just got a huge feature in High Times. We said, you know what, it just didn't make sense. So I am here cooking on the show floor tomorrow for Pro Mix. And I'm the guy in the colorful apron, smiling and hopefully singing.
I like it.
Yeah, that's me.
That sounds pretty good.
And then I'm going to Palm Springs tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
And so, yeah, my goal this week, honestly, is just to see people that, whether you're in Toronto and we don't get to see one another, or you're on the other side of the country and I never get to see you, it's a great way to connect this week.
Yes. Can I, I'm not giving you a plug, but I'm just going to share. I've been to one of your experiential dinners, let's say. Is that what we call them?
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk to me about how that has evolved over time, like where the idea came from.
Yeah.
Maybe it's for those that don't know, your personal experience with cannabis, but also how it evolved into your profession.
Yeah, I mean, my story in cannabis and how I came to it is really simple. I'm a patient. I struggled with psoriasis since the age of 12. I smoked joints every day of my life since I was 12 years old, only realizing decades later that I was solving for a need state all that time, my psoriasis, right? 9 years ago, I removed gluten, dairy, and refined sugar from my diet and began consuming thousands of milligrams of cannabinoids, different cannabinoids and terpenes every day. 60 days, I dropped 30 pounds and my psoriasis went away. So for the last 9 years, I've traveled the world teaching people how to safely, properly, but for health and wellness, infuse cannabis into food and beverage. My experiences are not about how high can I get you. The experiences are demonstrate what the future of cannabis, food and beverage can be, which is about health and wellness, lowering inflammation, allowing you to sleep. The other side of it is, for me, I strongly believe that the future of cannabis is through food and beverage, familiar ways of consumption. My dad, who came home with a brain tumor from Florida a couple years ago, I didn't hand him rolling papers and flour and say, go roll a joint. He's not going to do that. But I did make him gummies and my fruit leather and chocolates, and that's what he consumes every day. So that's really my goal, inevitably, is just educating people through having a lot of fun and eating a lot of tasty food.
Done. You've done that.
Thank you, brother.
So it's not just THC.
No.
What else goes in, and how do you make it so?
Yeah, over 10 courses, you'll have 10, 15 milligrams of THC, but it's THCA, it's CBDA, it's CBD, it's cannabis, it's raw flower. I have my newest...
What does that look like? Like when you cook it?
Raw flower?
Yeah.
Well, raw flower, it's interesting. So I have a new book coming out. It's called How I Found My Health Through Food. And it's really all about how to properly infuse cannabis into food and beverage, which is really, for me, done through emulsification. This is the only instance where I will grate raw flour, and it's a toasted hemp seed crust. I use cannabis to experience all the parts of the flour, the terps, the flavonoids, raw, decarbed, whatever that looks like. Raw flour gives a really interesting flavor profile to this hemp seed mixture. So that's how I enjoy doing it. But it's a very terpene forward experience as well. Not only the natural terps in the food stuff, but added terpenes to really heighten the experience and give people this, not roller coaster, but, ebbs and flows, if you will.
It's smart. I also, this is very specific, but your fruit leather that you shared during COVID, if we showed up at your house,
yes,
was great. It was great.
Sound like you're trick-or-treating.
Well,
it was the best kind of trick-or-treating.
Although we did trade for galoshes that I had left at your place.
Right, that's how early in COVID it was.
Yes.
You had done an event with us at, I think it was Startwell. It was like the last day that we did anything. It was like February 28th, 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had your galoshes.
You did. And we traded them for fruit leather.
Well,
but that goes
I
won. You did.
I mean, great galoshes, but
you did. They are very colorful. The truth is, though, the fruit leather is a perfect example because when we look back at our experiences with fruit roll-ups, what do we think about? Good times, being a child. And so, obviously, my flavor profiles are geared towards adults. But when you go and you peel the parchment paper, you unroll it, you peel the parchment paper off, there's an incredible, experience and you're really accessing the memory bank. That's why it really resonates with people. Because the food itself, it's like eating a raspberry or a strawberry or a blueberry. It's really just the fruit itself. So,
it's delicious. Can I get your thoughts? Because that was early days even of edibles in Canada and in Ontario, right? Talk to me about what you've seen, the evolution, because I've seen you talk about, I don't know, I don't want to bash anybody while we're actually looking at a gummy manufacturer, but talk about what goes into most gummies that are on the shelves now.
I knew where you were going with the question, and thank you for asking it. Listen, which camera? Awesome. It's really easy to produce cannabis products for stoners. I'm one of them. You can come out with, and I'm not going to mention it because I love this brand, but let's say it's Doritos, cannabis-infused Doritos. That's easy. But can you create something without refined sugar? Can you create something that actually serves a medical purpose? And I just said this to Prentice, right? But my philosophy is very simple. If we are serving cannabis food and beverage, some of it, as medicine, what does refined sugar do? Increases or elevates our inflammation. What is cannabis designed to do for us? Lower our inflammation. What's the net result? It's not really looking good when you take a gummy that's filled with corn syrup and it's got 5 milligrams of some sort of cannabinoid. I'm sorry, but the medical benefits are zero. Zero. Because refined sugar is the freaking devil. So I would really hope, as people like Prentice, who's coming on your show, he's one of the guys who does it differently than others. Wild does it differently. That there are people doing it differently and better and more thoughtful. But I really do hope as we enter into this new world where we are trying to onboard new consumers of cannabis that we look to what it is they're solving for. And if it's need states specifically, then let's try to create products that actually serve those need states, not cause more. Am I passionate enough?
Yeah. So it's a lot for 9:24
I
a.m.
know.
Pacific
Presidential
time.
stump speech. Yeah.
Sorry, it's
you're running for
soapbox
cannabis
worthy.
president. I didn't even know.
It's soapbox worthy. I'm sorry.
Jordan, I do appreciate all that you do and for being here now and for being in town today, obviously. And I do love your fruit roll-ups. That's very minor. And I'm glad I gave back the galoshes to get back fruit leather. I would even buy you galoshes to get more fruit leather back. But I wish you well over the next couple of days on the trade show floor tomorrow and all that you're doing. And thanks for stopping by and sharing your passion, insight, and experience.
Thank you. Can I mention one last thing?
You can mention.
It's the most proud thing I have in my life right now that's going on, and I think it speaks to the future of cannabis food and beverage. I'm becoming an adjunct professor at Kendall College in Chicago and Clark in Washington State for culinary and cannabis. That speaks to what the mainstream world is looking for. And the future is cannabis food and beverage, and we're seeing the demand in culinary schools. What more can we say? It's really exciting.
It's like full circle.
It really is.
It's like bringing it all together.
It is. Thanks for having me.
I love it. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
That was Jordan Wagman. We have Jennifer Briggs Fisher from Goodwin coming up next. I don't see her right now, but I know that she's here. So she's coming up in a moment. We'll talk about cannabis law, her experience in it, and what she sees in the world. But Jordan, thank you so much. We'll be right back in 2 seconds. We are back at Planet 13 with Cultivated Live. I am Jay Rosenthal. And just a quick show note, I've been saying this whole time, you might hear construction noise. We are not building the cannabis industry, but literally someone is building a cannabis lounge right here at Planet 13, which is great. We are here with Jennifer Fisher. Hello.
Hello.
You're with Goodwin Proctor. I don't know the rest of it. Everybody calls it Goodwin. You are a lawyer.
I am.
One of the foremost attorneys in the cannabis space.
Well, there's lots of great attorneys in the space.
You have to say that. I don't have to say that. You have to say that. Talk about the first time you worked in cannabis.
Okay.
And were you like, oh, this is awesome?
I was like, oh, this is really scary for a lawyer because there's nowhere to find an answer.
Yeah.
And that's become what I really love about the space. But first time I was given a project, which was to analyze a risk of investing in a cannabis company for an investment fund and looking at all of their deal documents and like how they were governed and some of the restrictions that were in place and sort of assessing the risk. And this was in 2017. So this was really uncharted territory for this investor, but also for many people looking at the space. And so it was, thinking about the risk in a way of like, here are these state regimes that are coming online. Here's this overlay of federal illegality. And there's a lot of uncertainty in terms of what the risk is. So, and there was really just me thinking it through. There was like no case law to point to, no regulatory rule from the SEC, like nothing. And so it made it a little daunting because a lot of lawyers like to try and like find an answer. And this was like based on my experience and looking at all of these laws and these documents, here's my best advice about how to assess your risk.
So was this just thrown at you in 2017, or were you like, I want to do a cannabis deal? How did it come about?
Did you raise your hand, or were you volunteering?
Yeah, so I did raise my hand. I was really,
Okay.
So I live in San Francisco, and in 2016, voters passed, the adult use legalization. And so I started to see people getting really excited about California, like such a big market with an already really entrenched consumer base of medical patients, thinking about what this industry could mean for a state like California and the population there. And a lot of investors were really interested in getting on board early. And I had worked in my prior years in practice, I'd done a lot of white criminal defense, and I worked with a lot of companies and officers and directors and investors in highly regulated spaces. So that was the background I was coming from. So I was a little bit used to this dynamic of, okay, like how do we navigate a complex, like regulated industry, and try to make money in it. That's what my clients were, traditionally interested in doing. And so I kind of used that experience to transition my practice into cannabis. But I was really excited about getting involved in the space and what it could mean, and that it was so new and cutting edge. I really liked that. So I started putting myself out there, raising my hand, and telling people that I could help them think this through as they were getting ready to enter the industry.
Not trying to be funny by any means, but you work for a very legitimate firm. I'm wondering what conversations were like in 2017. Like, were they like, should we even take these clients?
Yeah.
And
so
what was that like?
I love that you asked that question because our
like the
team,
word legitimate.
Our
Well,
team,
some aren't. I mean, shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, so our team from Goodwin, there's 10 lawyers here with us for this week. We're really excited. We brought our practice, including the younger associates who are doing a lot of hard, good, and interesting work in the space, with us to MJ BizCon this week, and we had a team dinner last night, and many of them don't know the origin story of the practice because they came in and Goodwin, which is like we were the first of the largest U.S.-based law firms to have a formally established cannabis program in practice with the full support of the partnership and the executive leadership of the firm. Was very rare in 2016, 2017, still is somewhat rare. There's more law firms like Goodwin doing work in the space, but quietly. not that we are not quiet about the work we do and the clients we represent. But we were telling the story last night at dinner about like how hard that was to get here. Right. You know, lots of things that a lot of other sort of more traditional service providers, even financial institutions, we grappled with as a firm. Like, how does this affect our banking relationships, and how does this affect reputationally with our other clients? We didn't have to worry about that too much, because Goodwin, we represent lots of entrepreneurs in lots of sort of cutting edge spaces like life sciences and technology, all doing sort of interesting entrepreneurial, innovative work. So we weren't as concerned about that, but it was a factor we had to take into consideration. And then just sort of establishing some protocols around who we would work with and who we wouldn't in the space. And those very much still exist today.
Thinking about the trajectory 2017 to now, and you've been to the show a lot. I mean, we talked, I think, last time we were all here. Has the mood at the firm, that's not even what I mean, but like, has that risk tolerance or even the precedent changed dramatically, obviously, since then? Like, how does that affect the work that you do?
It really does, because I think we've seen sort of two different trajectories where risk tolerance has grown because people have seen the space develop without federal enforcement, and as we get, you know, these little glimpses into like what the federal government may or may not do, it's hopefully trending in the right direction and not the wrong. I mean, in 2018 when Jeff Sessions came on, we board and rescinded the Cole memo. We had a lot of discussions with our clients about what that means, and then it ended up not really being meaningful for them in a lot of ways. And so now people at least have some history to look at and say, okay, I think this is probably something we are going to be interested in, an industry we're going to be interested in getting involved in, and we're thinking less about like the enforcement risk. But now it's more the just investment risk. Like, this is a very tough market. So it used to be like seen as like green rush for those who were willing to take the risk, and now it's more like, well, there's more people willing to take the risk, but the reward isn't as great. And so we're starting to see some people back out or stay on the sidelines for now, just because it's been a really hard and challenging year for the industry.
We just call those smart people. I'm just kidding.
How do you advise for that investment risk, right? Because there's no, as you said, there's no right answers.
Yeah.
No one can really predict anything. If they say they can, they probably have a bridge to sell you.
Totally.
So how do you look at these risks, and how do you help clients navigate those?
Well, it's so interesting. People ask me all the time as if I know, and Jay and I were talking about how we know each other from politics back in the day. I worked on the Hill, I worked on campaigns. I'm the first person that will admit that no one can really predict what's going to happen on Capitol Hill. Things could change in an instant because of something totally unrelated to cannabis, and this just like gets tacked onto it. Who knows? Or we could continue to see total stalemate. And so when people ask me about safe banking or rescheduling or the farm bill, I'm like, I'll tell you what I think, but it's just as worth as much as anyone else thinks. Because, I think even when you're on the inside, you still don't really know how it's going to play out.
Well, it's that, but it's also like, and we all spend a lot of time talking to people in the industry where this is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Rescheduling, descheduling, safe banking, farm, but whatever it is. And what I try to say is like, it's basically zero people who are making those decisions most important thing. Most of the time. Like people very rarely is it someone's main focus to get safe banking passed through 100%. The Senate. Like, it's just...
Yeah. Even when, you hear some members say it's their priority, like among a lot of other things, and especially in the world we live in now, they have a lot of other pressing and important business to do, and they're having a hard time getting that stuff done.
They're having a hard time getting anything
done. I mean, then you layer on top the complexity of the issues that we need addressed, because they are pretty complex from a regulatory standpoint, and you layer on like the dysfunction of government.
We're going to talk about that.
It's like, okay, how do we ever get out of this?
We have folks coming on from talk about U.S. Cannabis Council stuff, and we'll dive deep into that. It is, even just working on the Hill, that it's like, it's not haphazard's not the right word. Unpredictable is the word.
It's unpredictable. Yeah, and I think even when people take their best educated guesses at what's going to happen, for us in cannabis, we've been wrong a lot.
Doesn't help build credibility.
Just when we thought things were there was going to be movement, and there wasn't. I think it's just been a lot of disappointment in that regard, and so it's hard to recover from that and think that. So how we've been advising our clients from a operational perspective, regulatory, is to march forward as if there's going to be no change. Do what you're doing, become operationally efficient, make good choices, and then if there's a change that is going to improve things remarkably for you, great. But let's not count on that happening anytime soon. But I think rescheduling is obviously huge, and could be, really significant.
Yeah.
And that's just a timing question. We just don't know.
You don't want to predict and give us an exact date?
Predict something, yeah.
You want to make news? No, I'm just kidding. I do. Well, I like you. That's first and foremost. But I also appreciate talking to you because you have a perspective that's longer than 5 minutes. It actually starts with making the case, I would imagine, to even your own firm that this is worthwhile taking on, and then carrying it through a number of years until now, where we're whether it's a year or 5 from now, we are on the precipice of something big, and it's already big, but you know what I mean. Imagine rescheduling, imagine safe banking, imagine interstate commerce.
Our the companies, clients that I work with, just being able to be treated as any other businesses.
What fun would that be?
I can't wait. I can't wait for that day. I mean, their legal problems might become a little less complex, but I'm excited for that for them because there'll be other challenges at that point, but. Some of these basic things, I would love to see them, just those hurdles removed.
Normalize things.
Yeah.
It's really about normalizing for the lawyers. Let's make it easier for them. No, I'm just kidding.
It's a really good selling point, I think, for politics.
That's how we should be lobbying.
Customers would love.
Exactly.
I really appreciate you stopping by. It's always good to talk to you and to see you, and to hear your perspective of how things are going. So thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. You could stay all day. That'd be great. Again, we are live at Planet 13. This is Cultivated live from Planet 13, under construction, which is great because there's going to be a lounge here one day, and maybe next year we'll just have it in the consumption lounge, which will make the day a lot more interesting. We won't be able to get here as early in the day. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back with Jason Tarasek of Vicente, another lawyer, but we're actually going to be diving deep into what's happening in Minnesota, which is one of the markets that people keep talking about. We'll talk about how they got to this weird place they are now and where they're going. We'll be right back in a second. Welcome back to Cultivated Live from Planet 13 in Las Vegas. It sounds cool to say that. I'm Jay Rosenthal, Chris Doramer, Jeremy Burke, and Jason Tarasek.
Hello, Jay.
Jason, you are from Minnesota. Well, you're from Wisconsin, but you live in Minnesota. Sure. You formerly known as the Minnesota Cannabis Law guy. You are now with
You can still call me that.
I can?
Yep.
Minnesota Cannabis Law. It's good for SEO to call yourself that.
I think so.
It is. But you're with Vicente now.
I am.
A leading cannabis law firm throughout the U.S. I've checked in with you hundreds of times about what's happening in Minnesota, but also I've known you for the past two people we've had on a total of like 50 years, but you have known, it might be getting closer to 30. When we were trying to buy weed on Haight Street, did you think we'd be talking about it this far from a dispensary in Las Vegas that looked like this?
Yeah. It's wonderful, though, that it's all come together, come full circle.
It's easier to buy now.
Totally.
We're in a store.
And you don't have to, go into a dark alley anymore.
You know, it would be cool, though, if they just, you walked up to the counter and they were like, Nugs?
Yeah.
Nugs?
Green bud.
Yeah,
Green bud. There'd just be
green
these
bud.
people following you on Haight Street, whispering green bud.
But that's how long I've known
Very
you.
ambiguous. I don't
since
know
we
what
were
they're
doing
talking
that.
about.
But also, as you were thinking about cannabis law in Minnesota, you sort of saw the future. Maybe not the timeline, but the future. Talk about the trajectory of cannabis in Minnesota.
Well, you helped me see the future, Jay. We were all with our families in Chicago, and Canada had just legalized, and you were launching the business of cannabis to get ahead of the market. And I thought, why aren't I doing something like that? I'm going to steal Jay's idea, just copy it, and do something similar in Minnesota.
But with a real skill and talent of law and a legal degree.
Yeah, so I started citizen lobbying in 2018. Pushing for legalization. I became the Marijuana Policy Project lobbyist in 2019. We got a legalization bill, a hearing in April 2019 that lost on a party line vote because the Republicans had controlled the Senate at that time. But it set the stage, I think, for where we are today in Minnesota because unlike a lot of states, Minnesota is not a direct ballot initiative state. We had to go through the legislature, so we needed the electoral politics to line up. And thank goodness they did in November. The DFL, as the Democrats are called in Minnesota, took control of the House, Senate, and the governor's mansion. And so we had the trifecta, and we got her done. Governor Walz signed it in late May, and we're now in the process of setting up our Office of Cannabis Management, and hopefully we'll have dispensaries open early 2025.
Well, there's two things there that I want to talk about. Mm-hmm. One, tell us what DFL stands for, because it's the coolest name for a Democratic Party in all of the country.
I always forget to define it.
Right.
Democrat Farmer Labor Party. As I'm not a native Minnesotan, so I may get some of this wrong, but as I understand it, it was three different political parties that a long time ago realized, hey, we were all sort of Democrats, let's just form together.
So it's the DFL.
Yeah.
And you mentioned as an important factor getting the Office of Cannabis Management set up.
Yeah.
That is not as easy as it should have been. Was?
We've had a few hiccups.
For those who even follow this as closely as people who follow it, it was more than just a little hiccup. But
yeah. So we're approaching 6 months now since the governor signed the bill, and as far as I know, the Office of Cannabis Management still has only a handful of employees. We still don't have a permanent director in place. We're hoping a permanent director will be named in February or so. That's the latest rumor. But rulemaking is underway. Again, they named someone to the post. She had been operating a hemp shop, and I think almost immediately, everyone realized that she was selling non-compliant products, and of course, maybe not the ideal candidate to be running a $1.5 billion state industry as your chief regulator. So she gracefully stepped away.
Who figured that out?
It was widely available through a Google search.
Okay. So Google.
And so social media just sort of
Jeremy
went
was
crazy.
trying to plug a journalist somewhere in Minnesota.
Yeah. I was trying to see if my profession was useful, but apparently not.
I think the Googlers were quickly in touch with the reporters, who then wasted no time in sort of,
if I may,
spreading the news.
And I'm not I don't want to. There is a weird. I don't even. Is the word a peccadillo? That is a word that exists.
It's a word.
Great word.
There are legal
I know lots of words.
THC beverages
Yeah.
on shelves throughout Minnesota.
Yeah.
Like normal stores, convenience stores, grocery stores. Talk about what the hell is going on, or how that happened.
So we legalized hemp-derived THC in 2022. Frankly, when I was working on that bill, I expected it to be mostly gummies. So, but of course, cannabis is the law of unintended consequences. So I did not foresee the explosion of THC beverages. Like you say, Jay, they're available absolutely everywhere. You don't need a license to sell them, and that's going to remain true for probably another year. They will be more tightly regulated once our Office of Cannabis Management gets up and running, because that regulatory body will oversee both the hemp-derived THC products and the adult-use products. But for now, you can walk into virtually any restaurant mostly in the Twin Cities, I imagine, but you will see, of course, beverage offerings, and then you'll see THC beverage offerings. And so long as they're carding people and they have a on-sale license, you can sell them and people can consume them in public, and you don't need permission from anyone to do that.
Can you give us, or me specifically, the 4 Dummies reason why this happened? Like, why did this loophole occur?
Yes.
If you can call it a loophole. Yeah.
Or
there
call
was
you
like
a dummy.
a
Take your pick.
real deep dive.
That's a given. Yeah.
There's like a real wonky dive. I'll give you like a basic wonky dive. So I was lobbying for the Minnesota Cannabis Association in 2022, and my job was to try to get CBD in food. Well, of course, everyone knows in this industry you can't put cannabinoids in food. So we had to call them edible cannabinoid products. And then this is during COVID, so we're lobbying and whatnot over Zoom. One legislative staffer said, well, let's just go for THC in edible cannabinoid products. I said, you're nuts. It's never going to fly. The Republicans are still in control of the Senate. He said, no, let's try it. And sure enough, it happened. And Republicans, not only did they approve it, they voted overwhelmingly for it. Granted, this provision was stuck in an 800-page health omnibus bill that passed at midnight of the last day of session, and there was very little attention given to it. So there's been a lot in the Minnesota news about whether the Republicans knew what they were doing, but here we are.
Squeak. Just a little squeak through.
Does no one read these? Like, is that how politics works? No one reads the stuff?
I will not answer that question.
It's
I
funny
think
because
some
you're saying
people,
these microphones were like a Senate hearing.
I think
I don't recall.
certain Republican gatekeepers on cannabis definitely knew what they were doing, and the caucus looked to them for a thumbs up and thumbs down. They gave them a thumbs up, and it happened.
Yeah. Can I ask a more, practical or businessy question? Does that, because there are real brands there are real cannabis brands making beverages on shelves in normal stores.
Yes.
Are they?
They are now at Total Wine, which has a THC section.
now.
That was big. That lit up social media about a couple of weeks ago.
What is the advantage? Are lots of companies pressing that advantage? I guess is my question.
Yes. Yeah. Well, interestingly, so because hemp is legal everywhere, you can ship it in from wherever. You just need, at this moment, like I said, you don't need a license, but you do need to register with the state saying we're selling these things.
Okay.
Well, there's no fee for that. And they have a map on the Department of Health website that shows where these products are coming from. It's all across the country. I think it's even Puerto Rico. So, yeah, because, again, hemp is legal everywhere. You have access to interstate commerce, and certainly a lot of Minnesota businesses that are in on it. And frankly, our microbreweries are really in on it because they realize, well, we have all this packing equipment. We can easily make THC beverages with the stuff we make India Pale Ales with.
But it would taste better than an IPA. No offense, IPA. Yeah. It's so disgusting. It really is. I really can't. It's awful. So there are THC beverages on normal shelves, including Total Wine.
Yep.
There's interstate commerce as it presents to this. Yep. They're serving it in restaurants.
And bars.
And
everywhere.
bars. So the sky must be falling in Minnesota.
No. Well, that's the amazing thing. So we talked about how this may or may not have been accidentally legalized. Well, when we came back for the legislative session, it was interesting that none of the Republicans were necessarily saying we should repeal this.
Is that because of hemp farmers?
Well, it's because they realized their constituents like THC beverages.
You don't say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there was money.
And in fact, they really didn't put up much opposition to the whole adult use legalization. I think they saw that this is going to happen. So the focus, even from Republicans, was let's make the bill better. They weren't trying to kill it. Not that they had the votes to kill it anyway, but it was sort of a lukewarm opposition.
Can I ask you another trend question?
Yeah.
Because you're obviously live in Minnesota, but you're from Wisconsin, and Wisconsin is often in the news lately. But so is South Dakota. Like it's going back to the ballot again. Like, what is that trend line moving from like Illinois west and north?
Well, like you said, I'm originally from Milwaukee, went to school in Madison. I just paid a visit to the legislature in Madison to find out what was cooking with their medical marijuana bill. And of course, the Republicans have a stranglehold on that legislature, but I was surprisingly encouraged. It looks like there may be some movement on a medical marijuana bill there. Even Speaker Voss, who has a reputation for being a bit of a hardline conservative, I think he may be open to that. I met with the Senate Majority Leader who said he's got the votes if it can get through the House. So I'm eager to hear perhaps there may be traction there. And the hemp-derived THC stuff, granted, it got a ton of attention in Minnesota, but I mean, Wisconsin has sort of the same thing. So long as you manufacture your products within Wisconsin, so they can't ship in for Puerto Rico like we're doing in Minnesota, but you can sell those products in Wisconsin too, because they have adopted the federal farm bill as their hemp statute. So long as you're not engaging in interstate commerce, you're good.
And what about South Dakota, which has had it seems like a torturous go at this?
It's
and we
been
did
really
some work,
sad.
you do some work there, but we've done some stuff together.
So a few years ago, as my Minnesota clients were getting impatient for legalization in Minnesota, we started taking a peek at South Dakota. And in fact, the voters there approved both adult use and medical on the ballot. Medical is still
it's dispensaries.
So I represent medical marijuana companies in South Dakota. Relatively small market, but still a market. The adult use aspect of that was shot down in the courts, despite my best effort writing an amicus brief to the South Dakota Supreme Court. It didn't carry the day. So adult use is not legal there. They did try another ballot initiative that failed. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of money to move the needle in the media regime in South Dakota. So there were some moneyed interests who really sought to shoot down that adult use initiative.
And the governor's not in favor of it.
Very much so, yes.
She's
not
tough.
in favor. But they're going to try again. They're going to keep trying again because the voters have approved it before. And I think there's a large segment of that population who'd like to keep trying until they get it.
Yeah. And a good grassroots advocacy effort.
Yeah, Marijuana Policy Project has been super active there. There's now a pretty active sort of medical marijuana business community, that's making money selling medical marijuana products. And, money buys advertising and it helps you do signature drives. So I think it'll happen. We'll see.
Can I ask you about a timeline in Minnesota? Back to Minnesota. Like, when are the dispensaries going to open?
We are told first quarter of 2025. So we have hired a consultant.
Oh, my God. No offense.
I know. We're told the rules. Okay.
It's like every state has it.
Rulemaking is going to take like a year. I have volunteered to write the rules in 2 weeks if they'll just let me. They said no, thank you.
ChatGPT could do it.
You could copy and paste another state's rules, I think. And I know it's not that easy, but honestly, we're state number 23. It's not that hard. Let's just do it, right? I know it's not that easy either, but we've got a lot of agencies involved. We just don't have a lot of institutional knowledge about cannabis necessarily. So there's a learning curve within our agencies. Again, they hired this policy consultant that I think is educating them, but it's a long slog, Jay.
Yeah.
Why reinvent the wheel every time though?
Well,
after New York.
Right. I ask them that all the time, and it doesn't make me any friends. But
I don't know. Again, it's not rocket science, right? Yeah, we could easily adopt what other states have done. We do have obviously some differences. Our social equity aspects are a little different than others, and we have 15 license types for some reason.
15?
Yes, which is arguably too many, right?
You think?
Yeah. So our legislature reconvenes in February. And I know they're going to look at the number of license types. We have some ambiguities in the bill. It's not entirely clear who's going to qualify as a social equity applicant and how you can set up your business structure to avoid
Getting sued.
disqualifying yourself as a social equity activist. So we're working with the regulators and legislators to fine-tune some stuff, but I'm hopeful that we get some movement there. Naming the director, I think having somebody in place actually pushing it will really be important. But we're coming into the holidays. I don't think they're going to name anybody anytime soon.
I nominate Jason Tarasek.
No, thank you. It sounds like the hardest job on earth, to be honest. And to be honest, it doesn't really pay a lot.
Yeah.
So, relatively speaking, considering how complicated it is, and just like what a political quagmire you have to walk through. So I do not envy that person, but if you're interested, send the governor your resume. He's looking.
Send it to gov@minnesota.gov. Jason, I appreciate your expertise, and you continue to be the most knowledgeable person about what's happening in Minnesota. That's why I'm hopeful that you're wrong on the timeline and that it's Q2 24.
Yeah, I'm hoping there's some under-promising, over-delivering, but I think that
has never been the case in cannabis, so...
Yeah, that might really be the timeline.
Yeah.
We're just going to have to be patient.
Okay. Well, in the meantime, you can buy your THC beverages at Total Wine.
Yeah.
So.
Or right around the corner.
That's true. We're literally right there.
Yeah.
Literally right there. Well, Jason, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for making time and sharing all things Minnesota, because it's like the third time Minnesota's come up, and you've only been here 10 minutes, but people are like super excited about it because it's a new market.
Should be. $1.5 billion market. We only have 2 medical marijuana companies, so there's not going to be a ton of established players there. So lots of opportunity.
So call Jason.
Give me a call.
1-800-Vicente. No, that's not the phone number.
No.
But you can find Jason on LinkedIn. He's there. You can find him. Thank you for making time. He's also here if you happen to be watching and you're in Las Vegas.
I'll be hanging at the Cosmo today.
The Cosmo.
Trying to do some
Chandelier
work.
Bar.
Yep.
There you go. He's Jason Tarasek. We'll be right back with Robert from AR Wellness and Bryan Barash from Dutchy. We're going to be talking about the U.S. Cannabis Council and all things happening in D.C., or I guess sometimes not happening in D.C. Jason, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. I am Jay Rosenthal with Cultivated. This is Cultivated Live. We are live at Planet 13 in Las Vegas. Good morning. We're with Bryan and Rob. We're going to talk about U.S. Cannabis Council stuff. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Bryan, we've met before. Where'd you get the hat?
I got the hat from you, Jay.
Oh, good. It looks good.
Yeah, it's a cool endeavor. No, we're really excited to be here and talk about Cultivated News, and just want to give a big shout out to Jay too, who's awesome member of Team Dutchie, and excited for him to be taking on this new adventure too.
Well, it's great. I have Dutchie hats too. Just not.
Don't wear them.
Just not right behind me. Just not right behind me. Every conversation we've had right now, and probably every single one we will have over the next 2.5 days, something about DC is going to come up. Do you have news to share with us? Timing? Do you want to break news here about safe banking passing the Senate at some point?
Well, one thing we're working on is making sure that we're not breaking as much news on podcasts as the industry's done in years past.
Good.
Blanket Twitter Spaces ban for the rest of the year.
What is the latest? Well, let's start actually not with safe, but with rescheduling.
Sure.
Yeah. Tell us.
Well, as you probably know, in addition to the U.S. Cannabis Council, both Rob and I are intimately involved in the Coalition for Cannabis Scheduling Reform, CCSR, and we're working really closely with a number of consultants and folks who are close with the Biden administration. We feel pretty damn confident that we're headed towards a Schedule 3 decision. Obviously, the DEA still has some work to do, and that's nothing's final until they put something forward. But we think that's very likely to happen, and we think it's very likely to happen before the election. I don't think it's a surprise to anybody that President Biden called for this and would probably like to run on it for re-election, and so we're hoping that the timing works out so that he gets to do that, and we think he is too.
I like that.
For the skeptics or the cynics among us,
Jeremy.
Yeah,
I guess that's your job, right?
Where does the confidence come from?
Look, I would say while the duck does not appear to be moving on the surface right now, it is furiously kicking beneath.
Okay.
And I also think not a ton of news right now is probably good. It means things are happening in due course, and the process is we believe playing out the way that it should. HHS came back probably earlier than we expected, even with their recommendation to Schedule 3, and that obviously kicks off the next portion of the process, which is the DEA review. It would certainly. I don't know that the HHS would have made that recommendation had they not been relatively confident that the DEA would follow suit. Obviously, can't say that with 100% certainty, but I think it would be surprising.
And I would just say, I think the confidence comes in large part from the deep connections that many of the folks in our coalition have with decision makers in Washington. And just to put a plug in, I'll say if there are folks who are interested in joining, it's a large coalition.
Yep.
It's includes nonprofit social equity organizations as well as companies. And so, if you're part of the coalition, you certainly have access to the sort of intel, and there are specifics to be had.
Let me put you on the spot for a second.
Sure.
On that question. Like, how big of a tent do you want in the coalition? Because there are a lot of social equity people who have opinions about rescheduling and what it's good for, what it's bad for. So,
well, I'd say it's a pretty big tent to start with, and we're interested in continuing to bring more folks involved from various stakeholders in the industry, not just companies themselves. But I'd also say that we do see rescheduling as a path towards descheduling. I mean, it's not the rescheduling is not the end all be all.
Yeah.
In order to get to descheduling, you're going to need to get DC comfortable with it, and that means more research. That means just seeing that the world didn't end when cannabis got rescheduled, and that means that we're going to be able to push further once if and when rescheduling does happen. So we certainly don't see this as the end point once rescheduling happens. We do want to push further.
Yeah, and as someone who has followed and worked in politics for a very long time, I think it's a truism that the first thing is never the whole thing. And so getting these first steps towards reform is really critical to having eventual full normalization and descheduling. And frankly, our coalition is very broad. We have people who feel much more strongly that they wish it was a descheduling decision right now. and may feel a little disappointed. But what the coalition is all coming together around is this is the minimum that needs to be done right now. And, some folks think this is a great first step. Some folks think it's not enough, but still good. And so the tent's big enough for all those folks. We have social equity operations like the Weldon Project and Justice Foundation and lots of other groups that, come from a wide spectrum of views on this. And, we welcome them all.
Can I ask a political question? When states like Ohio vote overwhelmingly, really, to have adult use programs like they did a couple weeks ago, what impact does that have on folks in DC that maybe not as far along? Like, are they like, oh shit, like our voters are here and we are here, we need to bridge that gap?
Yeah, Jay, I think you've heard me say this before, but I think people expect that politicians are leaders, and while they are in some ways, like the reality is most politicians are followers of the public will, right? And this is an area where, on cannabis, it's been a particularly taboo subject, and it's taken them a lot longer to come around to where the public will is. But I think the two big standout points in my mind that DC has been paying attention to in the past few months are the overwhelming vote in Ohio and the first Gallup poll that showed 70% public support across every major demographic, across conservatives, Republicans, every way you could break down people, it had majority support, and I think people are paying attention to that.
It's interesting because it came up in our last conversation with Jason, who's based in Minnesota, but we were talking about Wisconsin, and he was just visiting the Wisconsin legislature, talking about the medical cannabis program there, and very little resistance. Like, okay, let's get it done because we have competitive states, but also like the resistance that used to be, I think, immediate is actually good. Well, how do we get it done and make this incremental as opposed to like have voters throw it down on us?
And one thing I'd mention there is that every time a state flips, that's 2 more senators whose constituents are now part of a legal cannabis program, and X number of congressmen depending on the state. And I think that's actually something that USCC has started to do a significantly better job of is mapping who is representing us and based on where our facilities are, dispensaries, our cultivations, and being able to go into the offices and saying, you represent us. This isn't just a monolithic industry here that's coming in. Like, you're our actual representative.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that is powerful. It creates a connection and a there that may not exist otherwise. And every time a new state flips, it just gives you more opportunity to have that more intimate level discussion with somebody who's representing you.
And I would say in some of these red and reddish purple states, right, you have a strong case to be made that there's a pro-business, pro-liberty argument for supporting these businesses. For, when we talk about something like 280E reform, you're talking about a tax that was never meant to apply to state legal businesses where they're paying an effective tax rate in some cases in north of 80%. I don't know how you could be a principled conservative Republican and say that that's a fair way to go about your business. So hopefully there's a strong message that resonates from states like Ohio for those legislators.
How do you have that argument with maybe some conservative senators who just are against legalization in the first place? Like the pro-business, the states' rights, like all this thing makes sense to me, but how do you even begin the conversation?
I think there's certainly an educational approach to it. I do think some of the prohibitionists view, 280E repeal as a tax cut and a tax break, and you have to lay out the facts and show. Well, I think you mentioned what the effective tax rates are north of 80% at times, and say no, this is fair taxation here. We're just looking to get to par with the rest of the world, and I think that actually does have a powerful effect on some folks because they get to look at it through a slightly different lens.
Yeah, and I would say part of it too is just having the right messengers, right? Like. Having a company with national presence that doesn't have a large footprint in that state and going to a conservative senator and saying like our industry's great, like probably not the right approach. But as we map out, you bring in a small business, that's in someone's district to talk about what they're facing as a business owner. They may not agree with the principle, but they're still going to meet with a business owner from their district. Or us as a technology provider and compliance company, we talk about how the illicit market works versus the controlled market and how we make sure people are properly licensed and that they are operating within a compliant scheme where they're not selling to kids, where they're not able to get access to products that are going to put someone in the hospital, that can really resonate with them.
It's interesting, before the first person that came on, we were talking about Planet 13, and he was saying, it's not an argument necessarily for Nevada folks, but others, like he was saying there's like 550 employees related to Planet 13 in Nevada.
Yeah.
In Las Vegas itself. Like, it's a huge number, especially in smaller states or more rural states. Like, that is a massive number. It's a big operation for sure, but like, those jobs are real. And I just think about in Canadian landscape, like, Organogram is the largest private employer in Moncton, New Brunswick. They have enormous sway.
Is that right?
Yeah. There's like almost 800 employees total, like whatever it is. Like, that's a huge private employer in small towns, and they have enormous sway. That's on the local and maybe provincial level, but in the states too, like some of those conservative states, think about South Dakota. If they had a real cannabis operator that was huge, it'd be a major employer.
It is a major employer. The jobs are huge, and I will tell you, the federal government has started to, even while policy hasn't moved, the administration, different departments have started to move because they've had to. And one of those places is the census recently announced this past year that they're now tracking cannabis jobs as a specific category. And I do think that's an important step for legitimacy, because if you are a gun trafficker or a heroin smuggler, they don't put that on the census, right? Like, if they put it on the census, they recognize it's a legitimate industry.
Yeah, that's like the
That'd be
precursor.
spicy.
Yeah, but thinking about that, and I don't want to get too much into sort of the day-to-day of sort of what Dutchie does, but like that classification of the type of job, I don't know what that relationship is to like the type of payments you could take. Like, there's categories of the categories of business in which people are operating are well defined for tax purposes, for payment purposes. Like, at some point there's going to sync up these types of businesses, so you don't have to pretend you're this to get that. Like, it's...
You would hope so, and a lot of that is driven by national standards organizations, and so more and more of them are starting to recognize. I mean, even like things like national weights and measures, starting to weigh in on things about cannabis. And
starting to weigh in. I like what you did there.
Yeah.
It's a good pun.
What are they weighing in on? Out of curiosity.
How much is in an ounce?
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I don't know.
Just like starting to have standards around weights and equivalencies and stuff like that.
Yeah, some states look at dry weight still, some look at wet weight.
Interesting.
I know dry weight versus wet weight's been a big debate in Florida lately as well.
Huh.
Yeah.
Like, so standardization across, like gasoline, kind of. I mean, that's a slightly different, but when you get the gas,
Yeah, no, I can absolutely see your point.
Like a gallon is a gallon is a gallon.
You know what you're looking at, and you don't have to parse it as much. Reading the COA to determine what is this measurement versus this one that you may see in a different state. Absolutely,
that's a fun story idea. What bureaucrat is sitting there? Like, should it be wet? Should it be dry? Yeah.
Well, it's not dissimilar to something Jeremy wrote today actually about standardized lab testing.
Yeah.
Right, which is an industry challenge, but eventually it may not be an industry challenge. It actually might be a mandate.
Yeah. Well, and another one actually that has nothing to do with laws, but is really impactful for criminal justice is the U.S. Sentencing Commission, which weighs in on what types of sentences are recommended for, things revolving around cannabis. And that's another area where we're seeing progress.
See? Even the pessimists have something to find.
I'm a pessimist. I'm a skeptic. Yeah,
I didn't mean to call you a pessimist. I meant a skeptic.
You can say it. It's fine.
You can say it. Yeah.
Yeah, skeptics. Bryan is going to wear it. That's what the next shirt's going to say.
Cultivated skeptic. Yeah.
Rob and Bryan, I appreciate you making time during this very busy time for both of you.
Thank you.
Enjoy the conversation. Thank you for the work you're doing in DC and in your other lives as well. Thanks for coming by Planet 13. There's something you can exit through the gift shop.
Well, we'll be back in DC next week, and looking forward to continuing to fight for the industry.
Amazing. Rob, Bryan, thank you so much. We'll be right back from Planet 13 for Cultivated Live. We're going to be with Jon Prentice from JointCraft. The company's name is new, so I wanted to make sure I got it right. Last word.
Yeah, last word. I got to say, love the new Cultivated News newsletter. Everyone should subscribe. Got to put in a plug for you guys.
Yeah, congratulations, guys. We're really pumped for you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
You can get a hat too. Don't worry, Rob.
That's why I said that.
We paid them to say that.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to Planet 13. This is Cultivated Live. We are cultivated.news. For all the people that want to go to our website, sign up for our daily newsletter. It's awesome, and you will be a better, smarter cannabis person for having read it every day. Usually at 7:01 a.m. Eastern Time. That's what I'm trying to go with, 7:01. We are here right now with Jon Prentice of JointCraft. That's the new name of the company.
It's true.
Starting less than a couple weeks old. The name.
I think we officially changed it November 3rd or November 4th, somewhere in there.
So we're right on the cusp of the month.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Tell us what JointCraft is, and then from there we're going to go reverse and then forward. How's that?
Sure. Okay, that sounds like fun. So, we started an asset-light brand a few years ago. That was our kind of idea for getting into the cannabis industry for the second time after doing the whole software adventure. That's right, and it was called Pinners, focusing on really great handmade small joints. It was a bit of a roller coaster ride. We went through an insolvency with our first license partner, and some challenges with our second. And pretty soon we realized that for better or worse, we probably needed to stand on our own 2 feet. This whole brand thing wasn't going well, and we had the opportunity to take over what is formerly CannTrust in Vaughan, Ontario. So we now have a 60,000 square foot processing facility, our own license, and a new name, which is JointCraft. And it really is a kind of a testament to crafting great cannabis products with friends, and that's what we're doing up there today.
And the facility is amazing.
It looks like a spaceship.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I think, as far as build-outs go, there's probably not too many facilities in North America that were built to these standards.
With good reason, probably.
Yeah, I don't think they'll be building anymore.
But for you, it's great. For you and your purposes,
You're like,
it's amazing.
It's ours now, but I don't know if I would have done that.
That's right. Well, many thanks to the CannTrust shareholders. We greatly appreciate your contributions.
Well, they deserve thanks and patience, not from you, but from the previous round of things. Before we go back to your history in cannabis, talk a little bit about the origins of Pinners, because I've heard you describe, like you're an engineer, like how you actually thought about what you wanted to craft, what the challenge was from an engineering perspective, but also what the market opportunity was.
Yeah, I mean, it really spawned from two thoughts. The first thought was, kind of probably about 2.5 years ago, there wasn't quite as many smaller joint options. So a lot of the joints that you were buying were a single 1 gram joint in a tube. And quite frankly, I didn't want to smoke a baseball bat every time I bought a product. And the second thought was that it was rolled like shit. Half the time it was running, or the cherry was falling off, or it was clogging, and it just wasn't a good smoking experience. So that's really kind of the ethos that started Pinners, is we wanted to sit down and figure out, well, how do we make a smaller, more bite-sized joint for somebody that likes to have a few through the day, and that's kind of what we focused on, is making it thinner, making it still maintaining its length, enhancing the filter length to cool down the smoke and increase the flavor, and really thinking about how do we put the weed inside paper in such a way that it's going to burn consistently and evenly every time. And so that whole down the rabbit hole adventure turned into a manufacturing method and process that we've now scaled up, and today we're co-processing and making our own joints, but we're probably manufacturing around 3 to 4 million joints every single month out of Vaughan, Ontario today.
How did you do the R&D? I'm just curious. Were you looking at how finely ground the flower should be?
That's definitely part of it.
Yeah, I'm fascinated.
I mean,
by
it really started with figuring out, okay, well, what's the perfect shape?
Yeah.
So,
and did you look at the engineering, about?
Well, I guess it had
burning?
to start with learning how to make a rolling paper cone.
Okay.
Right, and there's lots of ways to do it. But what we found is if you go over to Indonesia or India and you watch how these cones are made, they're made on mandrels, which is basically a formed rod, and they wrap the paper around it to make the shape. And so it started on my 3D printer, printing all these different sizes of mandrels to make different shapes of rolling paper and hold the little filter as we twisted the paper around until we got the proportions of the cone right to get the effects that we were looking for
cool.
when you're consuming it.
But then what about the mill?
That's the other half of it, is
Yeah.
the actual putting the weed inside. So, you've got it's a big function of density. So, if you grind weed really fine, it's going to be very, very dense. It's not going to fill up the cone very well. It's going to be short. It's going to make it stubby, and it's probably going to be super prone to clogging, because there's, when you burn cannabis, there's a lot of oil that's released, and you'll see the oil ring form around where the cherry is on the end of the joint. When the particle size is very small, it likes to bind. and that creates a clogging effect as well. The other challenge with milling that way is you get density separation. So when you're having all this product flowing out of the mill, all the really fine particles go down to the bottom, and all the big particles like to stay on top. So all of your THC is sitting at the bottom of the bin, and all the leaf matter is kind of sitting at the top of the bin. So through many experiments and lab tests and all sorts of iterations, we've developed methods to mill the product in such a way that we're minimizing the amount of waste, and we're ensuring that the density is perfect for the cone that it's going into, so that we can fill it out exactly to the specification that we're looking for.
We were working on this pre-roll project in a state in the U.S., and we brought a couple different products to market.
Yeah.
One being what would be considered as more high-end flower, all the way down to something that was more like keef derived. And then it got to market, and the smokability of the cheaper product had way better results. People's perception of how it smoked versus even value, people were so much happier with those as a result. And so I can imagine exactly what you're talking about is saying, how do we make sure that we have the right matter and the right format of the product to be able to match those two, so that the perception of value from the customer is experienced?
100%. It's so important. I think when a customer goes and buys a multi-pack of joints, if 2 or 3 of those don't perform when they smoke them, they're probably not going to buy that brand of joints again. They're going to try something else. So, you're really putting it all on the line as a brand by when you put out your joints. They got to perform, and they got to smoke well. And I think we have this thing called a Smokosaurus Rex at the office. You could put
It looks a lot like Jon.
It does. It's true. Jon or Adam, my co-founder. No, but it's a piece of lab equipment that actually smokes joints, so we can observe how that joint's being smoked down, and how much smoke is coming off of it, what's the resistance for airflow consistently. So we're really getting scientific about how we make amazing joints.
You are the cannabis industry's Mark Rober. Do you know who Mark Rober is?
I do know Mark Rober. Big fan.
So do you guys know who Mark Rober is?
No, I don't.
Because you don't have kids, and John. Mark Rober is a former NASA engineer.
That's right.
Who, I guess, kind of not cashed it in, but left to do basically YouTube projects, for lack of a better term. The most famous thing, he created an obstacle course for squirrels, and he engineered an obstacle course to see if they could learn enough to do this whole obstacle course.
Didn't he do the glitter bomb as well?
Yeah, the glitter bomb in the package is stolen out of thing. So he does this cool stuff. He made a dart board that moved, so you could always get a bullseye, but it's super complicated engineering. Anyway. That was one engineering project. I'm saying that you are a beautiful cannabis nerd.
Oh, I appreciate that.
But this isn't your first nerdy cannabis thing that you did.
No.
Right.
No.
Your first thing was
I'm just a
Organics.
nerdy guy.
What's that?
I'm a nerdy guy.
Yeah. Yes. No, I meant that in the most positive, groundbreaking way. Talk about your sort of first foray into the cannabis industry with Ample.
Yeah, so with Ample Organics, there's a lot of little factors that go into the story, but I was working in medical devices, so I'd become a little bit familiar with Health Canada, specifically ISO 13485, which kind of regulates medical device manufacturing. The piece of it that was really important is it was my first time encountering a business that was regulated on the aspect of quality control and quality assurance, and having to mandate a quality system in place within a company. So I kind of learned to work within this framework. And fast forward a few years later, I had an opportunity to help out with the Peace Naturals application to get to become a licensed producer, and I wrote all of the record-keeping attestations and what we called Section 11, which is basically a quantitative and qualitative analysis of how your proposed record-keeping methods will meet the requirements of the regulation. And we submitted it, and obviously Peace Naturals got approved, and everything kind of went on from there. So I guess I became a little bit confident in my my knowledge around okay, this is the information we want to.
There were that many
store.
people that with any knowledge of it, so it was good.
Well, that was it. I think there were 4 licenses when I started Ample, right? And so I started a software company to focus on exactly that. How do we do record-keeping, inventory management, and transact in cannabis in a compliant way that not only meets Health Canada standards, but brings business efficiency as well? Because I think that's that's a common thread in the whole cannabis industry broadly, I think, is balancing regulations and balancing profitability and your ability to operate efficiently as an organization as well. So kind of being able to take both those sides and turn it into a software company is the Ample Organic story.
Are small fun joints more fun than software?
It's a different set of challenges completely. You know what I love? I love walking into the building in the morning and it just reeks like weed because we've milled probably 200 kilograms worth of weed that day, and you can just smell the terpenes in the air right to the lobby. It's the best. It's like walking into a candy factory for me. So
It's funny. I drove some of my kids to. Literally
candy factory.
I drove my teenage daughter and two of her friends to Buffalo a couple weeks ago. And you drive by, is it Medicinal Saints? The one that's...
Medical Saints.
Medical Saints. And you roll down the windows, and the highway reeks of weed. Like, it's like...
Beautiful thing.
It's unbelievable. So I roll down the windows. Dad, put the windows down. It's freezing. And I was like, okay, I'll put them up now. Like, I
got my whiff.
The whiff of it is, like, so strong on the highway. You're going, like, 100 clicks, and, like... It's just awesome.
I mean, should we give them a call? Was it worth calling about?
I don't know. Like it's
was it pungent? Did it
on them.
Make your eyes water?
You should call me. It does smell. But I don't. You're much more the connoisseur than I am. But what it actually smells like. So you mentioned. I'm going to get the facts. The fun facts right. You said 3 to 4 million a month.
That's right. 3 to 4 million pre-rolls today a month.
And is that like what is there an insatiable appetite for awesome little joints?
There's an insatiable appetite for joints. It's the fastest growing category in legal cannabis in Canada right now. Part of that I think is infused joints coming to market, and that's a very fast growing category. But even market share in pre-rolls in general is still continuing to grow. Now, that being said, I'll also say we're coming into winter, so there is a slight seasonality to it. You're going to see bigger pre-roll sales in the summer than you do the winter. But one of the opportunities I had in the last few weeks is I took some sales data, national sales data in Canada, and being a nerd, I sat at my desk and I hand-coded the number of discrete units or number of joints in every single SKU in this data set, which was for 3,000 SKUs or something.
Busy day.
Very busy day. Yeah. But the cool thing about it was I was able to derive approximately how many joints are being sold month to month, coast to coast in Canada, actual individual joints. And the number is about 35.5 million. So
10% of that is not nothing.
I was like, that's one per person in Canada.
That's
as a
right.
total population.
Per month.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Per month. Yeah.
Per month.
Yeah.
That's right. So it's like 375 million joints a year, approximately, that are being sold in Canada. So I think 3 million joints a month isn't that many. We're just getting started. Right. I'm stoked for the future. And I think we can go a lot bigger than that.
Can I ask a business question? Because Jeremy's the one in business school. But like, when you think of that, like, what if you're saying 3 to 4 million a month of 35 million total per month in the country? Like, how many other people are making the rest of that? Is it like another 1,000 companies, or is it another 10?
Listen, I think a lot of people are doing them internally. Making joints kind of in-house with knock boxes or however they do it. Unfortunately,
so you use the word knock box?
Yeah, knock box.
Is that the thing
it's a little shaky thing? Yeah, we don't use vibration at all. We're very anti-vibration because again, that whole density separation thing and like happening inside your cones. These are like the physics pieces, right? So we don't do that. We use compaction. We make sure that every single piece of weed that goes into that cone is compacted equally to the piece that went before it, and we compress that cone like 9 times in the process of its manufacture to make it perfect. So I think, listen, if you're making 35.5 million joints are being made right now. So a lot of those are being made. There's some other co-manufacturers. There's some larger scale guys that have great brands are making a lot of joints every month, and there's some small guys that are making a few. The reality is our joints are better, they're cheaper, and if they gave us a call, they'd put a heck of a lot of margin right back into their business. And not only that, they get a consistent supply.
It's a really hard thing to not do at scale in your own organization.
Yes.
Like, it has so much potential, and it can really supplement the offering of, especially if you are already maybe a flower production, and being able to repurpose certain product that might not fit the quality standards that would go in terms of packed, but like, it is incredibly difficult to scale.
It's super labor intensive, and I think like I like to call it a deceptively simple thing. It's just making a joint. How hard could it be, right? Yeah, it's deceptively simple. And I think companies can do a lot better by outsourcing it. Frankly, it saves money. It's going to be a better joint. It's going to be delivered to your door, and that's really what we want to focus on, is not only our brands, but enabling other brands to succeed with a great product in market as well. And we're super stoked to get into edibles a little bit too. This is kind of something else that we're doing, is starting to get into the gummies side of things and manufacture those as well. So
I wanted to ask about that, both about the gummies, but other products, because I was at the Vaughan facility, and there were some cool products that I've also seen online. Tell us about what else is
coming down the pipe
that you can share.
Okay, so we're gummies is one thing, hard candies is another. We've got some very cool experiments happening in that area right now. On the whole pre-roll inhalable side, I've got every shape, size, and combination of pre-roll you could potentially imagine coming in the next 6 months, from your keef-coated, distillate-infused, super flavorful, to glass-tipped with hash and really elegant, to your standard flower pre-rolls. So we're really doing the full gamut. I think that where we're super excited to be at MJ BizCon and in Las Vegas in general for the show is, like, I think packaging innovation is an area that we're going to see a lot of movement in the next little while. I think having a quality joint but having innovative packaging is going to be really key. And we're also super stoked to kind of keep our eyes out for any new innovation, like maybe someone's making a wood-tipped cone, like that, or something different.
Yeah. This has been awesome.
That's great to catch up. It's been too long. I feel like we haven't done this in a while.
I know, but it's so good to hear. Well, it's so good to dive in. I think Jeremy said, like, the R&D part. Like, that is what it takes. And that must be what it takes in every industry. It's just more fun to talk about it when we're talking about producing something net new.
We all like the product.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
I was just going to say, I mean, it's just, we're consumers. We can say that. And it's like, I think a lot of products in the early days were not made by consumers.
That's right.
They're terrible products. And just having people like yourself listen to us and get feedback and actually make things we want to use is awesome.
Yeah,
something we're happy to support.
We put our name on every bag we make, and we really want that quality to shine through. We say quality in, quality out. We mean it. It's incredibly important. And I think when you look broadly at what's happening using the Canadian industry as an example, I mean, these large-scale, publicly traded, with a CEO that doesn't live in Canada, has never been to Canada, has never visited a factory. I mean, they're getting the results of those decisions.
Right.
And you're starting to see the small guys, the operators, really start to stand out, become profitable and sustainable. And I think long term, we know where this goes.
Yeah. Well, Jon, as always, thank you. I feel like it's coming full circle. I was telling our producer, Matt, that early days of previous iterations of what we're doing now, like, you were one of our first friends. So thank you for that, but also thank you for this, and good luck with everything going on in Vaughan.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jay. Really appreciate it.
We'll be right back from Planet 13 and Cultivated Live with Thomas Winstanley of Theory Wellness. We'll talk all about their operations, and I'm going to try to get the states right. Massachusetts, Maine, Vermont, and maybe soon New York. I guess he'll tell us that when he comes on. So we'll be right back with Thomas Winstanley. Amazing. This is Cultivated live from Planet 13 here in, I don't know, what is it called? Sunny, beautiful, exciting, illicit. That's for John coming up next. Las Vegas. We are here.
It's not illicit.
There's a lot of illicit.
We're in a fully
No, I don't mean.
facility.
Very regressive comment, Jay.
I honestly wasn't even talking about cannabis. I was talking about everything else that happens in Las Vegas. Honestly,
That is illicit.
everything else, weed is legal
Vegas
here. Everything
is a
else is
descriptor.
shady.
Illicit.
We're here with Thomas Winstanley of Theory Wellness. Thomas, thank you for being here.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on, y'all.
I've talked to you before in a variety of settings, both online and in real life, including during Las Vegas last year?
I think so, yeah.
The one difference, though, is that I've actually been to a Theory Wellness in between these two times. In Brattleboro, Vermont, it's not my hometown, but it's somewhere we go a lot, and we love it, and it's a great shop.
It's a great
You were
shop.
saying it's one of your smaller ones.
Yeah.
And then before you came on, I was trying to describe, I was off the top of my head, the states you were in. But now I know, but I will recount. Maine, Massachusetts, Vermont, Ohio,
Yeah.
New Jersey.
New Jersey is getting built out right now.
And I heard you're
We're-
going to break a bunch of new states right here live.
Yeah, well, we got some morsels I can throw out, but yeah, we also have a big build out coming to fruition outside of Boston right now too, which will be our final rec license.
Where's that?
Medford. It was a really, really interesting licensing process for us, and we're going to be doing something really different where we actually have one building with two separate doors. So Theory makes a seltzer, a beverage brand called High Five, and we're going to be opening one of the first beverage dispensaries that's going to be bodega style. That's going to be only beverages, pretty much floor to ceiling coolers. Because
We've been talking about
Yeah,
this for
a lot of
years.
beverages. Well, we had someone on from Minnesota.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
And they have beverages now in, what is it, Total Wine.
I saw that, yeah. I mean, and we're really leaning into the insight that we know people who are drinking beverages are not always your traditional cannabis consumers. We know that retail can be really complex for certain folks who maybe have different buying habits, and so we're really kind of going into this phase where we see, the beverage category is going to continue to accelerate. And we know people just want to go in, buy a couple of cases, and get out. So this is going to be a big, big jump for us. So this year was added a lot of new stores, added some new states, and then next year, through the end of this year, we're going to be flat out with New Jersey and Boston.
I have so many questions around this
Let's go.
beverage. Are you ready? Now, within your own data from the other retail environments, there would have been something that told you that this beverage concept was like a now moment. What have you seen in the purchasing pattern data of your beverage customer that you're like, I'm anticipating that it could show up similarly in the store or it might show up differently?
For sure. Yeah. So, I think generally beverages had a 1% increase annually in our buying patterns, which is actually a significant number. And we also see universally or nationally, there's about a 5% compound annual growth rate around beverages. And I think that's actually accelerating. And so I think part of it was the Theory way is that we were walking around the Medford building before it was built out. It was just this massive space. And we just kind of said, floated to the co-founders, could we do a little beverage shop in here? And they kind of thought, and they were like, yeah.
Oh, there's the chief marketing officer again.
They're like, there was kind of a little bit of this pause and was like, oh, well, yeah, I think we could do this. And I think part of it too is, being a CPG guy in a past life, beverages is probably the most accessible point within the industry, I think, for a lot of people from the control standpoint, the normalization, the socialization factor. And so, we're really bullish on helping kind of open that door a little bit. And then I think on the fringes too, you have things like consumption lounges, which are starting to get traction in Massachusetts from a political standpoint. Beverages are going to be a massive mover in that whole new phase of licensing. And so we certainly see that there's white space within this area that putting a dispensary is really going hard at a white space. But we also think too, it's so novel and people are so used to that experience from the alcohol side. So why shouldn't they be able to just go in, shop all of the best beverages in the state? We have also are bringing in some really the best in Massachusetts as partners in this project too. We will have the most affordable beverages in the state, and we're talking 50% off traditional MSRP within this store. And so again, our goal is really to move some throughput and open up an experience, and hopefully people are as excited about a beverage dispensary as we are. And we'll have our full store next to it too, so it's 2 doors right next to each other. But we certainly see that this growing trend is something that is going to be a big part of the future, and that's why we think, based on our data sets, we think this is a calculated risk, and we hope people like it.
One, it sets you up to like know so many things, right? When you eliminate the other noise of other purchasing and have that level of focus from a retail environment, you also start to identify if and how customers want to purchase in that way.
For sure.
And I think that the other thing that it creates a big opportunity for, and it's actually something we extensively spoke about a couple of years ago, was like everybody knows how to drink something.
For sure.
And so the barrier to entry around education looks different.
Very much so.
And being able to talk about flavor also in that consumption pattern, I think is really interesting to be able to connect it. And when I start to think about like promos and the seasonal calendar and what means, it opens up so many opportunities from a beverage perspective. So I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, and we do a lot of that. So a lot of what I get to do too is I work really closely with our production teams. I'll look at CPG forecasts on flavor trends, and then because we run our own canning lines, we're really nimble in creating new products really quickly. And so every time we launch a seasonal, we did blueberry lemonade this summer, and that was one of the top sellers. We had a cranberry last fall that crushed. That's coming back. We're doing a sparkling pear for the holidays this year, which is another kind of seasonal trend that we think is going to do well. But I think a lot of it is we have this very consistent feedback loop with our consumers and our guests where we're surveying them constantly. When we launch a new product, we ask for their feedback, and then we take it back and we readjust formulations if we need to. And that two-way dialogue actually informs us, where I would say my role is much more of, I like to listen. I like to talk, obviously, but listening is so incredible, because when we say, what do you want to see from a beverage perspective, people will tell us, and we'll listen. And then we'll try to act on the needs and the feedback that we get. And a lot of our pipeline from retail and production has a synergy that is this two-way street. I never want to be a guy in a marketing team who's like, well, I think consumers are going to like this, so let's make it. Let's get some data in on it first. Let's kick the tires on it and create a feedback loop.
It's interesting because we had a conversation, different show, different podcast, and they were doing extensive research, like look-aheads with, you're going to tell me, like flavor people.
Yeah.
Like worldwide flavor people.
For sure.
Yuzu and mango, like whatever the flavors were.
Flavor trends were like kind of
Huge.
what you're talking about, traditional CPG, to match that, and how do you leverage familiarity in purchasing in other places? Like if yuzu or if mango is blowing up in terms of popularity.
Yuzu's so hot right now. Yuzu lime, it's like crushing.
Sounds good.
Well, it's wild because in Canada,
we had
it'd be like 3 years ago.
Everything.
PC Financial, big grocery store, created it's not financial, PC. Loblaws created these advertisements that were like for yuzu cheesecake, and there were like a couple things.
Everything yuzu.
Yuzu was one of the best-selling flavors in edibles in cannabis stores that summer. It dropped off.
Totally.
After that. But it was this weird trend that you could identify in regular life that showed up in cannabis stores.
It's the CPG parallels.
And
they run on a same track. And
let me know when you're going to do an espresso martini, because
that actually probably will never happen. But we have beverage additives. But beverage additives is a great example where I started to do the research. We are R&Ding, for better or worse, we're R&Ding beverage additives, which are fantastic. But when we look at that portfolio in the beverage category, that is a subset of the beverage category that's one of the largest CPG growing areas. Because people buy water, you get Mios, you see where the placements are. And so it's really funny when you start to look at these CPG analogous brands, and then you can find a way to bring them into your stream. And what we do is if we want to make a product, we'll really do a lot of research that is CPG research, but then I'll use SEO trends and try to look at white space around SEO. Does this product exist? Is there a reason it should exist or it shouldn't exist? Are the search trends increasing around this product? Is it something people are looking for? And we have this whole kind of validation set in our R&D process where we can say, we actually think this is a good bet to make. And most of it is, I think, as cannabis continues to become more normalized, we're going to see a lot more of CPG analogous products enter into the space. Flavor profiles, product categories themselves. And again, all comes back to beverages. That's why we're bullish on beverages.
And cannabis is tough because, well, any CPG measurement even is tough because it's only measuring what was. Like, you can't tell if a product is selling if the product isn't in store in the first place. And so your intersection of being able to include customer feedback from places like SEO is so important for us to not just be reactive, but also say, where can we take a more proactive approach?
Yeah.
CPG is on a path where they're identifying flavors like 2 years in advance.
Yeah.
And cannabis is on a path where we're identifying flavors maybe a year in advance in some instances.
I mean, if you're lucky, a
Yeah,
year. It
right?
would be great to do production planning a year out, but it's so hard to do now.
We're just not there yet. And so how do you get and stay relevant to the customer, but also use that data to inform those decisions? And we look at other industries all the time to say, like, what's that production pattern look like? And we are quite a long ways away from that.
For sure. And it works really well for us because we're vertically integrated in 3 of those states. We can turn on a dime.
Yeah.
And we can also use Massachusetts as our biggest market. We usually use that as kind of like a test kitchen to be able to start to bring those products into other markets and figure out how to do it. But what's great about a company like our size is that if we're like, hey, let's just start R&Ding cranberry lime, you know, we can knock that out in a month or 2. Right. I mean, we can have that on shelves in less than 3 months if we want to go that route. And I think that's also what separates our industry from some of the traditional ones where they have to plan 2 years out. We're like, we don't know what the next month is going to look like. We don't know what the end of the day is even going to look like. So maintaining a level of flexibility to navigate your product selections based on quick responses and market trends is a great thing. As long as you don't become the Cheesecake Factory,
right.
Which is like, we talk about that all the time. Like, we don't want a menu that is so packed with everything that people just sort of like...
They can't make any decisions.
Yeah.
Let's get the chicken parm.
How do you... Sorry.
No,
go
go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say, how do you think differently about the value, the lifetime value, not to use a business school term,
for sure,
of a beverage customer versus a non-beverage customer, right? Because in my head, it's like a beverage customer, it might be an entry point, but ultimately, if you're a regular consumer, you move past it. So how do you think about the market?
Yeah. So I think it's really interesting, and I don't think we have enough data to really see like customer lifetime values as it relates specifically to beverages at this point. Because I think we're still also learning what SKUs we want to have in the beverage space. Like, a good example is we launched an energy drink, one of the first energy drinks, and all of our data was like, this is something people want. We looked at like gamer communities and also like extreme sports communities, and there's this massive overlap of cannabis and energy drinks. We just, you know, in a SKU rationalization recently, we decided like, we're not gonna make this anymore because people just don't really want this. But we're still seeing this massive lift around sodas, and we're seeing a massive lift with seltzers.
The product was like a THC-infused energy drink.
Yeah, it was.
Surprised people didn't want that.
Right,
I mean,
you know, it's like all the data. You're just like, and you look at, you know, and you look at, yeah, and it's like, I looked at, are there brands that are doing it? There were like one brand, but it was like, are you a black market brand? Are you like a real brand? And, you know, and so there was white space in that instance, and we also had seen search trends year over year were increasing around cannabis energy drink. And so we were like, okay, this is going to work. And then it just, people weren't there. We tried normalizing price points on it. We tried to do, which we don't do, we sell as 4-pack, most beverages as 4-packs. We actually broke these up into singles because most people are more likely to buy a single as opposed to an energy drink. Right, and so we tried all these things and we just couldn't get the traction. And so I think what we will find, though, is, especially with beverages, I think it's once you find the sweet spot with a consumer with what they like and making sure that's always available. Because that's one of the limitations is making sure that you have, if we have 6 seltzer SKUs, some of those may not be available when you're looking for it, and people will only come and buy when they see what they want. So I think over time, we have a lot of data learning to do around this category. And something that we're also really conscious of is, like, you know, we're going to be in the Boston market. Drizzly was the company for alcohol delivery, and that market was conditioned to ordering via delivery. I think with our beverage program, at some point, that's going to fill another need too, where you don't have to go to the dispensary, but you can have cases of your favorite drinks delivered to you. And so again, like I think this user base, I think this group is going to continue to grow. And I see a lot of people like my in-laws who are like Charleston, South Carolina, not super into cannabis. They loved it. They just thought it was they never thought they could enjoy cannabis the way that they were able to enjoy a drink. How much of that is placebo and like, oh, well, it's in a can and it looks like it's a real product versus, are they scared from other cannabis-related products? It's hard to say. But I think overall, there's still so much room on the table for those consumers. And I think it is something like, yeah, it feels a lot better to go home and like drink a high five than take a couple of hits of a vape pen and it's a whole different thing. And I think over time that's going to get a much higher adoption rate, without a doubt.
Also, Jeremy, your question around or lifetime value is the data set is pretty small.
For sure.
Right? The data set just in terms of rec cannabis is small.
So
just
small.
To start, if you were to look at traditional other industries, they're utilizing 10 years worth of data to validate things. So
10 years.
Really
what
different.
a dream that would be. Yeah.
Yeah. And then on top of that, we're talking about a category that's relatively small. If we look at other states, the production of these products can be incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
And so do we even have enough product in market to have enough data points to measure what this actually looks like in the purchasing pattern? And so I too am like that the category itself, if you look at it as just revenue, can, I think, be misleading in terms of where the potential of it is.
We joke about that all the time where it's like 3% is not that great. Like we put like more than 3% of our energy is going into beverages, right? But we're still kind of making that play. And the other thing too that's interesting is like when you look at the cost per unit side of things, there's a really good margin on that product, but at the end of the day, the consumer's paying probably higher cost per milligram of THC than any other category. So when you're buying, 20 gram, 4 or 5 milligram seltzers, and you're paying $15, like that's almost on equivalency of our lowest base chews, but not even close. Like,
but is that you have to make your margin that way, basically?
Somewhat, yeah. And I think there's just beverages also just have a ton of challenges. Like storage is one thing where people built stores not expecting like the volume that it takes to store cases of seltzers and beverages. Yeah. So like one great question I get whenever entrepreneurs who are opening dispensaries ask me like, what would you tell me? It's always like build a bigger vault space. Yeah. Like build for the contingency you didn't know you need.
And like the accommodation of a fridge, because there's an impulse that goes along with something like a beverage where if it's cold, it feels very different to purchasing it than if it's not ready to go.
Right.
Like if you were to use a similar comp size market product, which would be maybe concentrates.
Yeah.
And you think about how much space they take up in a back of house in a retail store.
It's like this versus this. It's like
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's, I think, something that, again, like, the market is almost catching up to the category, which is a really interesting evolution to see. And so we also do wholesale B2B sales, and so we're also working on the marketing front on this B2B strategy to help integrate the products into the retail experience and help normalize that, whether it's buying a fridge, whether it's giving out, koozies or mini coolers or whatever it is, because it does make a difference. If you're buying High Five for the first time, I want you to drink a cold one. So we have cold ones on the floor at all times just to make sure we're keeping that loop together. But I do think over time though, the market actually has to wrap itself a little bit more around beverages for them to be successful. Yeah. And that's why we see things like, a beverage dispensary will accelerate a normalization of this category that we're bullish on.
Even having a fridge on the sales floor increases beverage sales 30%.
Easily, yeah. And we always like to make sure to brand them so you can see the product. Like when I go through the stores, like always ask them to like rotate the cans so the branding's out, which is slightly pedantic, but still matters.
No, I'm into it. Merchandising.
Perfect. Are you kidding? Thomas, I really want to thank you because you're always an enlightening person to talk to, but also you share and you share insights both how products are being made, the data you look at, why it's important, but also theory is just crushing it. Like I think that's well established. But thank you, and we look forward to connect with you down the road and all things theory and Maine, Massachusetts, Vermont, Ohio, New Jersey, and the rest.
Yeah.
And Medford. Next time we're there.
Medford, yeah. Let me know next time you come through.
Don't worry.
I'll meet you at the stores.
See? That's really
Any
why
of y'all.
That's really why I want to hear. Just when I'm back in Massachusetts, I have somewhere to go. He is Thomas Winstanley. This is Cultivated Live. We'll be right back with Jon Bond. We're going to shift from the Northeast to Missouri, specifically, because Jon is with Illicit Gardens and From the Earth, Missouri. So we'll be right back with Jon Bond. I'm Jay Rosendahl. This is Cultivated Live from Planet 13 in Las Vegas. Krista and Jeremy are joining me on this side of the table, and Jon Bond, JB, from Illicit Gardens and From the Earth, Missouri.
Yes, sir.
Welcome.
Great to be here, dude.
Are you comfortable in a dispensary?
You know, I've been in a couple of them, so I feel like I'm a little on edge, but no, dude, this is great. Everything's great, man. This is awesome.
So fun, right?
Happy to be here, man.
Yeah.
And it's officially like Christmas time. With
I know.
Like yeah.
It was it was the first time I'd moved Christmas trees.
Yeah.
And it turns out I did it wrong. These ones come apart, and I didn't know that, so...
You don't have a lot of experience.
I don't have any experience doing it. All my experience was yesterday.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah, wife and I just set up our first Christmas tree in the house in Missouri. So first Missouri Christmas back in Kansas City, which is cool.
Snow yet?
Yeah, dude, we got like 2 inches of snow last weekend. Like literally like a day after thing. It's pretty unceremonious. It was like, well, and the snow's here.
Thanksgiving and winter.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Give us the footprint. Tell us about Illicit Gardens.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're a vertical brand out of Missouri. We have cultivation manufacturing license out there, and then we also have our retails, which are From the Earth, Missouri. Yeah. We have 5 of them, and then we just acquired 2 dispensaries in New Jersey, and we are moving into New Jersey as well too, and those stores will be under the Illicit brand once we get there. So super excited to move the brand beyond the state, but the last, we've been in Missouri now since medical started, right? We've got almost 400 employees, and just, trying to provide great plant medicine to the good people of the Show Me State.
And it's, I don't know how to say this. People in the Show Me State like weed.
Dude, people love weed.
I don't want to offend anybody in the Show Me State, but they love weed.
They do, and I say this all the time, but it's different growing up in the Midwest versus somewhere like California, Oregon, Washington, where it was just so much more accepted in terms of like cannabis being like a normal thing. And so like I call it closeted people. Like I stand on our dispensary floor all the time and I'll talk to like, little old ladies that are like whispering, and I'm like, hey, you don't have to whisper, right? It's like, you want to yell weed as loud as you can, and then they go up and spend money and buy their first cannabis transaction at a dispensary, and like seeing that moment over and over again with what I like to call good Midwest folks is like one of the coolest things ever, man. So it really shows like the universal like application of what we're doing.
Yeah. And we talked about the Midwest a lot.
Yep.
We had someone on from Minnesota talking about Wisconsin, talking about South Dakota, and North Dakota. Like, it's happening, but nowhere is it happening with the same gusto, certainly the numbers would suggest, as in Missouri.
Yeah.
Is that like a blend of like, I don't know, like people liking cannabis and having a very big medical market beforehand, and like a libertarian bent, like mixed together in some sort of sauce?
I think it's both. Missouri's one of those, I've lived in far more political places, let's put it that way, right? Everyone's kind of, let's show up and go to work. We're all pretty aligned, like people don't stray too far one way or the other. I mean, but, it's also to do with the fact that it's the only state in the union that touches 8 other states, and like 5 of those don't have an adult use cannabis program, right? So like you got Kansas, no medical, no adult use. Nebraska, no medical, no adult use. Oklahoma, just thumbs down adult use. Arkansas, just thumbs down adult use, and they're both medical only. Iowa as well, and you've got the Tennessee side over there. So it's
insulated.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And so the nice thing is we have great loyalty partners that we can see heat maps of where our customers come from. And while we absolutely never advise or encourage anyone to travel across state lines with cannabis, people are visiting Kansas City and hitting our stores all the time. So it's
in big ways.
Yeah, in big ways, all the way up from like St. Paul, Iowa. When I say like returning customers that are coming more than like once or twice, so that's a super cool thing, man. And I think the other piece to it too is like, you're catching people that, are so new to cannabis, and cannabis in the 8 years that I've been in it has evolved so much. Like you find products that actually meet people where they're at, like the lower dose gummies that are more effectively dosed, right? So that people like my mom, isn't losing her mind and hating weed forever after she tries one, right? All the way up through like the high dose stuff that like, my wife and I enjoy. So like, it's all just like I call it like a perfect storm of, opportunity for people that are trying to build something and are passionate about the industry.
Yeah. And New Jersey.
Yep.
Thinking about New Jersey, is that based on opportunity? Well, one is legal opportunity, market size, regulatory sameness. Like, what is or just cuz?
They're all one-to-one opportunities. We look at a lot of deals in other states. We have a ton of operational experience on our side from both the retail and the cultivation side. So like, it's kind of one of those things where like you have 100 conversations and you do 3 deals. But New Jersey was one that seems like it doesn't seem it will be and will continue to be, especially as New York ramps up. Everyone that works in New York lives in New Jersey. Is continuing to ramp up. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, someday.
Fair enough.
Someday.
It's a short trip over the bridge for a lot of folks, though, right? And so that's a really cool thing. And then we're also looking at other markets, limited license markets for sure. Like as much as like you'd love to have like the pride of going to build a brand in California, right? I know better, right? Like there's a lot of really established brands out there and a very defined and obviously the myriad of problems that come with like taxation and everything. So we're very specific about where we want to land. But New Jersey is the one that made the most sense now, and we're also very cognizant of not like spreading ourselves too far, too thin. Our senior leadership team is, like I said, very experienced, and we've made enough mistakes in the last 10 years to know not to make them twice, and not that we either have or haven't. You can also learn from other people's mistakes and watching people in that way, which my experience prior to Illicit and From the Earth, I saw a lot of that happen as well too. So it's nice to be able to run that up against the situations that we're in.
I'm gonna tease a story that you can share if you feel comfortable doing it. Part of being so high profile in Missouri is that when famous people come through, they want to get their weed from you. Talk a little bit about sort of an experience you shared with me prior to coming to Las Vegas.
Well, that's honestly probably one of our favorite parts, because the main concert venue in downtown Kansas City is T-Mobile. And then a lot of the pocket venues, I don't know if anyone's familiar with Kansas City, it's not like a huge place, right? The downtown area, what they would consider Kansas City proper, is about the size of like a tenth of the island of Manhattan, right? Entirely, right? So when there's artists and stuff like that, they usually stay downtown, or we have a downtown dispensary that they usually notice, and then they'll hit us up. And so Modest Yahoo, who I know you and I are both incredibly partial to as tribe members, he was in town and he was doing an acoustic show. And usually when you get phone calls from people, it's like their guy or their girl, and it's like you're 3 people removed, and Modest Yahoo just calling people up, hey, it's Modest, how are you? It's like, hey, one of the most humble, cool dudes in the world. So, of course, being a huge fan, I think that was actually like one of the first concerts like I smoked weed at and got in trouble.
Got in trouble?
I was like 15 years old. Yeah, mom beat the ass there.
Yeah.
Like to have that full circle moment, and then like we went and saw the show later, and he's just a cool dude, and again, I'm not a person that's like, oh, famous people rule, but like, Modest Yahoo, especially with how humble and cool he was, I was like, that guy's awesome. And so that's one of many, but that's honestly one of the coolest parts. Comedians, musicians, everyone loves weed. It's crazy.
It's funny you say that, because last time we were here, we bought tons of weed, and then you have to leave town.
Yep.
And we were going to a comedian the night before we were leaving, and then you walked past the comedian, like the meet and greet afterwards, and we just gave him all our weed because he's staying down for this next couple days to do sets, and we're leaving town, and so like there's lots of like aftermarket free weed rolling around in Las Vegas.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty cool, man. I actually started my cannabis career here in Las Vegas, and so like these guys Planet 13, I've known them for forever.
You were instrumental in helping us get here.
Oh, well, hey, I just introduced you guys, so you guys obviously been really excited. Such cool stuff, man. But I'm always partial to the Nevada cannabis scene, because that's where I started my cannabis career, and it's so cool to see how that has evolved. And it's still so interesting here. Like, it's such a cannabis-friendly town, but don't walk into a casino property with like a bag of edibles in your hand, or you're going to get, first and final warnings like immediately. And if you're like me, that's going to spark a "don't tread on me" type argument in the lobby, which is not what you want to have, right? If you're trying to do things the right way. So, it's great to connect with old friends and stuff. And I think Missouri's regulations actually were modeled somewhat after the Nevada regs as well too, which is pretty cool. So. Yeah, dude, it's continuing to evolve. It's much different than it was like 6 years ago when the industry kicked off here.
Well, it's funny because we've actually talked about building the industry a number of times with people who come in through, but they're literally building it. We can hear the construction.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
totally.
Yeah,
yeah, it's pretty cool. They got the conception lounge stuff happening. They've got their kitchen over here with the robot swords.
Looks like they're cleaning that machine. We've been watching them make gummies, but it looks like they're.
They've packed 2 flavors of gummies this morning.
Yeah, we saw that.
There you go. Yeah, they do a great job.
One was stuck.
Yeah, my boy Derek Gumin on from Rumor Mill.
Yeah. He was our first guest. He welcomed us here. It was so fun to see him. And it's such a cool venue.
It's great, man.
I'm never leaving.
He was one of those first friends in cannabis out here, man.
Yeah.
We actually worked for competitive companies at one point.
What were you working with?
That was actually our first cannabis company. One of my partners from the Earth Illicit, he and I had an opportunity to kick off a license here at Cultivated, which was actually my first swing prior to meeting the Dutchie guys.
Mm-hmm.
So,
we had that license as a cultivation license, not vertically integrated. Derek actually worked for, I'm not going to name names, but he worked for like the people that we'd broken up with the license. So anyways, we were mostly we were Montagues and Capulets as far as it should have been concerned. And I remember like hearing from the ownership group, who ended up being total fucking scumbags. I'm not going to say that or not.
Don't worry, it's just live streaming.
No worries. Yeah. But I remember like you meet someone, you're like, I'm supposed to hate this person. But I don't. Like, we're pals, and we've been great friends ever since. And he and his girlfriend came to our wedding in Oregon a couple years ago, man. Obviously been like close ever since. It's funny how this industry can like bring people together in a way that most other things can't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's because it's awesome.
Yeah, it's because
weed is great.
It's awesome, dude.
You can put that on a hat.
Yeah, put that on a hat, right? Yeah, we've got no shortage of. We got like $20 T-shirts. We sell a lot more merch in our stores in Missouri than any other.
Really?
And I've seen 6,000 dispensaries and how they order and sell things, right? Man, we sell a lot of merch, and we're consistently coming out with great $20 T-shirts. Some of them get a little bit of, but at the same time, that's like the fun part. People love wearing gear, and you know me, dude. We've known each other for a while. I'm a big gear guy.
Yeah.
And
tattoos.
Yeah, and tattoos.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Should do tattoos in the
right. I'm sure that's totally sanitary. It'd probably be great. No liability
in
there
the
whatsoever.
Lobby.
Yeah, in the lobby, sure.
Yeah,
no liability there.
On a Saturday.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Busy, 1,500 customers walking by a tattoo artist, and
Seems
what could go
hygienic.
wrong?
Seems like a good idea.
Totally.
We'll put it on the list of things to do. Jon, I appreciate you coming by. I appreciate you making the introduction of the good folks here, and look forward to following the success of Illicit and From the Earth.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate y'all having me out here, and congrats on the new venture. And look forward to following you guys. And I'm sure this isn't the last time.
This won't be the last time. I can promise you that.
100%, bud.
Great. That's Jon Bond, our emissary, I guess, from Missouri, the Show Me State. We're coming up with Shyra Costas. She'll be our last guest of the morning before we shut it down until tomorrow morning. She is with Delta Emerald Ventures. So we'll say goodbye to Jon. Thank you so much, and welcome on Shyra. We'll be right back. I'm Jay Rosenthal. This is Cultivated live from Planet 13 in Las Vegas. Krista and Jeremy are joining me on this side of the table, and Shyra is on that side of the table. She is with Delta Emerald Ventures. We're going to find out what that is, but before we do, and talk all about it, this is your first time at Planet 13?
It is.
And?
It is. It's amazing. I mean, I feel like every time I go to a dispensary in a new state or town, it's as if you guys have like a little bit of like Las Vegas spice in your dispensary, and it's really cool. I mean, it's amazing here. I mean, like I was walking around, they're like, oh, check it out before the interview, and like it looks like there's both like a science element, but there's also like there's something for everyone. It's amazing. It's really cool.
We've been watching them make the gummies this morning.
Oh wow!
And now they're cleaning that machine, which I noticed. I think one was stuck. I don't know, but it is fascinating to watch it from this angle too. But also, like it has a better. I've been to lots of states, and sometimes you feel like you're doing something wrong by going into a dispensary. Here, you do not feel like you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
You feel like you're meant to be here to buy weed.
I mean, is there anything that you do in Vegas and it feels like you're doing it wrong?
No, no, but that's part of the thing.
The bar is pretty
But you
low.
go to buy weed in Massachusetts, like you really feel like you have to go through like an airlock.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like you are doing something wrong, and to tell you that, we're basically gonna lock you inside of a room.
Yep.
Before we let you into the other locked room, before we don't show you product or anything, and just buy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is so open. It's welcoming. I love it. And
We're
all
not
the
leaving.
This is great. I love
Yeah.
it. It's awesome.
We're never leaving. Tell us about Delta Emerald Ventures and what it's all about, and then we'll dive into some of the
Absolutely.
things we do.
Okay, so Delta Emerald Ventures, we are an institutionally backed cannabis fund. We focus on technology primarily, but that's a big bucket. That can mean a lot of things. Like that's grow technology, like biosynthesis, things like that. I'd say 60% of our portfolio is focused on tech, and that is mostly because we have a lot of team members on our team that have a background in technology. So we have 2 in-house data scientists. I used to work at Oracle previously before this job. So we understand tech really well. But other than that, like 40% is operators or things that don't touch tech. So we're diversified, but we focus a lot on tech. We have our own in-house data platform that I think it powers like a third or like gets data for a third of the cannabis industry all throughout the supply chain. So we use that to power a lot of our investment decisions. And it's really fun because it's kind of a unique, I'd say Moneyball way to invest in cannabis because you're using data, you're seeing who has the solid numbers, focused on unit economics. And I mean, we're still deploying. We have dry powder left, which is a really fortunate position to be in, especially today. So I feel really lucky. And no, I think it's a really exciting time too to be investing.
You had me at Moneyball.
What's the opportunity for a cannabis specific fund? What do you guys have that a regular tech investor doesn't have?
Like cannabis tech versus just tech?
Yes. Yeah. That's
a great question. So I feel like with cannabis technology, there are a lot of nuances since it's so highly regulated. So if you get because I've talked to tech investors outside cannabis and they've had the same question, why is cannabis special? And I think there's a lot of nuances to understanding the whole tagging thing, and in terms of what it state by state too. I don't think a lot of investors who don't know cannabis well understand that it's a little microcosm in a state. You can't just have there's so many POS platforms that will own a very small region of a state, but they own that area. So I think to understand how fragmented it is something that is very unique to cannabis, and there's a lot of players. So to understand what the M&A opportunities are, the integration problems that are very commonly seen in the industry, I think that's something that a cannabis tech specific investor would understand more.
And with those invested, with the portfolio companies,
yeah,
and with the industry where it is now, and with the fragmentation you talked about, do all those things come together to equal a moat that is defensible when legalization happens nationwide? How do you think about that from an investment perspective?
Yeah.
To say that company, no matter what happens anywhere else, they're still going to own that region of Washington State. Not forever, but it's defensible.
For sure. I mean, I think that's a question that we're always thinking about when we make a tech investment. We don't want to invest in a POS company where there's a possibility that one from outside cannabis just come in once it's legalized and just take over. So that's something we're constantly thinking about. I'd say the best example I can give, and I might be wrong with the details around this, but if you look at a company like Toast made Toast is in so many restaurants, and it fits that restaurant model really well. But there was another group called Slice that was specifically for pizza, just pizza, and that did so well. And it was because it was really specific to pizza, and it owned that, and it took off, and like Toast can't compete with that. So we're looking for opportunities in that way, and I'd say like there are a lot of opportunities in terms of groups that work with retailers. I think retailers are loyal, and I think tech stacks are very complicated. So, and I don't think that's something that like tech outside of cannabis understands. So it's really hard to come into cannabis and understand, oh wow, like these techs, there's not like one, it's very rare in my opinion to see like one tech company owning the entire, I don't really see that. I don't think, and I think like there's a lot of like, the reason why it's so fragmented is because there are so many pieces to the puzzle and so many different tech companies out there that just know what they're doing and they own it and they're really good at it. So there's like a reason to have it be fragmented, but the integrations are tough. And I think that you have to like, that's something that groups outside cannabis are going to have a really hard time understanding. And I think it might just be, I mean, we're betting that it's going to be far easier just to buy it. You know, that's what we're betting on.
It's interesting because one of the things that we think about a lot that would cross over with like a tech offering is that the customer who's making the purchasing decision of the tech is also in a different mindset. Like a pizza operator is a different mindset than somebody who serves breakfast.
Yeah.
Right? They have really different needs when they service their customers. How frequently their customer visits their locations can all vary a lot. And so there is something very nuanced that happens in that space specifically, and just understanding what are operators facing, what are they focused on right now, what are the trends within that industry. And I think a comp industry from a tech perspective to look at is actually e-commerce or D2C e-commerce, because the tech stacks and the complexity within e-commerce is so high, and there are so many different offerings that stack on top of each other and maybe even have crossover, but there are things that are really good at one thing. And I would maybe argue that there is an opportunity for that to continue, is like building a company that is really good at everything that you need as a retailer is very difficult. And so being able to plug in the pieces that you want when they're prioritized to your business becomes an opportunity.
For sure. And I'd even say like, even just to serve, like you'd say a cannabis retailer is different from retailers outside cannabis. You can even look at that question and say like a needs of an MSO versus like a single state operator versus like a 5 to 10 store chain versus a 1 to 5 store chain. All their needs are really different, and all their goals are different in terms of like a mom and pop shop is just trying to like, might want to grow to another store, but is really focused on their customers, versus a 5 to 10 store might be really focused on, okay, how do we make this a business? Like I need to really cut the inefficiencies to grow. So like the needs vary, and I think that that even leads to even further fragmentation of like even more opportunities for new tech companies to serve like those needs. So I think, yeah, it's really a lot of different types that you can serve for customers.
Yeah.
Let's make this like actionable for our viewers. I don't mean that this is all very good information, but you know, if I'm a smart young founder of a cannabis tech firm, how do I get on your radar, and what are things that you look for?
Okay, I'm really easy to contact. I'm on LinkedIn, and I'll respond. So definitely like just reach out.
But you like a cold reach out.
I'm gonna tag you on LinkedIn right now.
I'm a fan of it. If you can spell my name right, you got me. So that's what I'm really looking for. So yeah, I mean we're really easy to reach, and cannabis is like, it is a small community. Like I know I just talked about how much fragmentation there is and how many players there are, but like as an industry, it's smaller than you. It's like there's opportunity, but it's small in terms of like, I feel like I know a lot of the players. So we're always looking for new groups that are trying to do something different. And there are so many problems that still exist. I always say that I think cannabis grew faster than any type of like technology or best business practices could form underneath it. So we're kind of playing a game of catch up. Like things are just selling, and we just like, oh my God, like I don't even know like our inventory. I don't even know how to like I'm like, people are spot checking, like that shelf looks low. Okay, let's get more for that.
This is all Krista thinks about.
Yeah, I mean,
she wakes up in a nightmare of that scenario. Just
yes.
like,
no, it's hard. So yeah, like reach out, and even if it's not the right time, because we usually like to invest in groups that have a product to market, or at least 10 months of like customer like information or data, like that's what we look for. But even if you're not there yet, we love to have like just like get to know you, have initial conversations just to see what you're about, and like an initial no, like if we say no to you first, but you say, hey, 6 months, we're going to reach these numbers, and like we'll talk to you and reach them. I mean, that speaks volumes. Like a lot of the companies that we're investing in today, we've said no to once or twice before actually investing in, because we want to see, do they do what they say they're going to do? And when they do, they're like, okay, all right, this is real, this is something.
Are there any verticals within the cannabis tech space that are particularly exciting to you right now, or that you think will be in the next couple of years?
Great. I was hoping you'd ask that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Done this once or twice. Yeah.
Yes, I think there are a lot of problems I think that we are waiting, like have not been solved yet. So one thing that I'm really looking out for are groups that can solve just like inventory problems. I think that's still really hard, and I think the way that people are like buying cannabis from suppliers, like that whole process, I think it's still like a little archaic. Like we can improve that with technology, and I think there are definitely some good companies that are coming up with solutions, but I haven't seen a lot of adoption of like a business practice that works. So groups that are looking at that. Something else that I think is really exciting is just the hemp-derived beverage sector. I mean, it's almost as if the federal government, through like the Farm Bill and a loophole, legalized cannabis without even knowing it. Like it's just kind of crazy. And you can sell like a hemp-derived beverage. You're not just like limited to dispensaries. You can sell in like non-dispensary, like in retailers, and just in like in Texas and Minnesota and Tennessee, South Carolina. It's exploding. So I think that is something. And I think people are cautious because it's a loophole. Like loopholes can be closed, but I think there's a lot of money and people behind it that don't want it to be closed, that are outside cannabis. So I think that it'll probably last a long time.
Like the good folks at Total Wine. They've come up more than any other brand. Total Wine in Minnesota. It's like,
get them on.
Seriously, we should have them on. Oh my God, that'd be so good. Because we talked about Minnesota before, and it is like loophole. I don't even know if the right word is loophole, but oversight. Like they're allowed to keep developing this market and build brand and brand recognition, and the retailers, non-cannabis retailers, love it. The restaurants are loving it. Like it's, and as I said when Jason was here talking about it, all those things are true, and the sky hasn't fallen in Minnesota.
Yeah.
It's like it's amazing. They can still
operate. People
operate.
are working. The sun rises, and you know,
they still have a state fair. It's like a whole thing. Yeah.
Do we have time for one more question?
Yeah, go.
I got one more question. Let me think about how to phrase this right. We're not in a zero interest rate environment. There's very few investors who can take a cannabis startup like the size of Jay's former employer and continually reinvest.
Yeah.
What is going to happen to this crop of startups that's at the Series C level or something right now? Like, where can they get growth capital?
Yeah.
What happens without federal reform?
Yeah. So so you mean like for companies that are like a little bit further along? Like where does capital
that are
come
not
from?
really startups, but maybe not ready to go public yet.
Yeah.
What do they do?
So I think it's tough. I think that, when you get to that level, and I think that a lot of cannabis specific firms like have run out of capital just like at this time. So it's a little tough to look to cannabis firms for larger rounds. I'd say you should definitely look towards outside capital, but I don't know. There are also a lot of groups that I feel like have just raised, burned cash like there's no tomorrow, and now they're like, all right, we need more to function. And I think rather than looking for more capital, which I get sometimes you just have to do, like you should really look at like how to cut costs, how to be operationally super efficient, because that is what I think, like if you are looking to cannabis, that's what they're going to look for. Because I think a lot of investors now are really tired of just saying, all right, we have like, thanks for the capital. We'll be raising in 6 months. So we'll let you know when that happens. It's like, try to like last a little longer than that, So that's what I'd probably say. But I'd say like for larger raises, it's probably going to have to be from outside cannabis unless other groups, and it might happen that other groups are coming into cannabis, but I haven't seen a lot of new funds come up really in a while.
Yeah, I mean the reason I asked the question is because you as a member of the press, like you say a capital raise, like wow, what a big thing you did. It's successful, but it's like why'd you need that? You know? And so I think that's like the kind of the framework that I'm trying to think of reporting in. Like what are the sources of capital, how to use it, and is it actually good for the business, right?
Yeah, like what is it going towards?
Exactly, yeah.
How much capital can you derive even from your own business?
Exactly right.
Yeah, doing business.
Right.
Yeah.
Free cash flow. Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
So, interesting questions.
Nice.
Yeah.
Shyra, this has been great.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
I really
this is
liked the
awesome.
conversation.
Yeah. No, loved
Great.
it.
And I liked all the conversations, not just yours, but
if you
yours
had
is
to
the
choose
most
a
recent one. You're here.
favorite.
And I want to thank everybody who tuned in. I want to thank Krista and Jeremy as well, because we are going to wrap up today, which is day 1 from Planet 13, Cultivated Live in Las Vegas. If you watch this and you are in Las Vegas, reach out. We might have some spots open. And even if you don't, if you come here and wait long enough, we can even put you on. So that's something for people watching in their hotel rooms now or on the trade show floor. Thank you both. Thank all of you. Thank the crew. Thank you, our producer, Matt, and Annie, who's running point out there as well. We'll see everybody back here tomorrow, 8:30 Pacific time, 11:30 Eastern time. Thanks for watching Cultivated Live.
Awesome.